bank accounts as required by law. Gates listed accounts in the United Kingdom, the Grenadines, and Cyprus.
Republican Senator Rand Paul of Kentucky has met with members of the Russian parliament in Moscow today. Correspondent Frederick Pleitgen.
Apparently, there were some Russian lawmakers who asked him whether or not he could ask for Maria Butina, of course, the Russian gun lobbyist, who has since been accused of being a spy for the Russians in the U.S., whether she could be released and sent back to Russia, or whether he could help with that. It's unclear if any sort of arrangements are being made there.
Paul also invited parliament members to Washington as he meets with Russian officials. A sporting goods chain is being sued by a couple who survived the Sutherland Springs church massacre last year.
The lawsuit claims that the Academy store in Texas broke the law when it sold the shooter Devin Kelly 30-round magazines, which are legal to sell in Texas, but not in Colorado, where Kelly was technically a resident. Gun law expert Emily Taylor says a purchase has to comply with gun laws in both states represented in the sale.
That includes not only your qualification to purchase and possess in either state, but also what firearms are legal in any given state.
The opposition argues that it's not realistic for gun dealers to know the laws of every state. Clayton Neville, Dallas.
On Wall Street, the Dow rose 40 points, the S&P gained 10, the Nasdaq closed up 48. I'm Ann Cates.
This is Truth Frequency Radio.
The wicked ones obviously under heavy Masonic influence.
Astronauts to the moon.
10, 9, ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2,
Not to get off track here, but I feel like we're in the Truman Show, and we're in a snow globe, and they just shook it up.
Welcome to reality.
And good evening, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages. You are tuned into your protection from deception reception right here at truthfrequencyradio.com. And you can pass go, you can collect 200, because you are currently tuned in to the #1 show on Truth Frequency Radio on Monday nights between the hours of 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. Pacific, 9 to midnight Eastern. That show is Jeranism Monday Night Raw, and it begins now. I'm your host, Jeran from Jeranism, and to my right is no one. But to my left is no one. That's interesting. And what if I told you that it will remain that way? Would you be shocked? Wait, no, Missa. That's the only reason I listen to this show. Well, I do apologize. It was not my doing in any way. I certainly would not have chose this outcome, but it is what it is. For more details on that situation, you will need to wait later in the show, because up first, we've got other business. One thing, real quick to get that out of the way, if you aren't doing anything this coming Thursday and Friday, why not come say hi to me? I will be in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. Stop on by. That is for the 2018 Canadian International Flat Earth Conference. So if you aren't doing anything and want to pop all over there, you can check out fe2018.com and select Canada at the top. Or you can buy your tickets at that time to the Denver Conference, which is coming up in November. Now, let's move further on. First of all, hello to everyone in the chat. Hello to all those of you at home and wherever you might be. We've got a special treat this first probably half the show. We're going to be talking with somebody named Andre Polgar. Andre messaged me a while back and asked me if I'd be interested in reviewing his book. He sent that out to me. It's a beautiful book. The name of the book is The Age of Anomaly. I think it's his second book, so we'll talk to him here in a second. Andre, are you there?
Sure am. Thank you for having me on, and thank you guys for tuning in.
Yeah, appreciate you coming on. And basically, I'm kind of a binge reader. So when I got the book, I did as much as I could. It's an easy read, just telling people if they're interested. And I really liked some of what you had to say. I did, write down a couple certain pages that I was really interested in. But I think to start, why don't you just tell people who you are, what got you into economics, and why you think that people might want to check out your book.
Many people know me as kind of the economist guy on YouTube because I run the 1 Minute Economics YouTube channel, and my trajectory as an economist has been pretty weird in that growing up in Eastern Europe, we didn't have that many amazing offline opportunities over here. So right out of high school, I essentially tried to do my own thing on the internet. I started a few online businesses, and they were going well. I managed to set some money aside. I wasn't a big spender, so I actually did end up having quite a bit of money in the way of savings. I also got accepted to university, of course, and it all seemed to fall into place, except not really, because as happens with many stories at this stage, things go wrong. And in my case, it was a bit of a perfect storm, because on the one hand, my mom got sick, and since we don't have an amazing medical system over here, I decided to take her abroad to get better treatment. And you guys can probably empathize that it does take a major toll on your net worth. Or in my case, the net worth in question ended up being evaporated. And not only that, but to make matters worse, all of this happened at the beginning of the Great Recession of 07-08. And needless to say, that took its toll on my businesses. Now, fortunately, I managed to recover. I didn't go to university initially because I just couldn't afford it. But as my businesses started growing again, as I started kind of becoming genuinely financially secure, I was essentially able to approach economics, go for my bachelor's, my master's, my PhD, do these things from a position of financial comfort. And economics has always been a bit of a labor of love for me. And especially in light of my personal experience, I've gotten to understand that behind the numbers, behind everything else, there are people. And that's why I've decided to write this book. I've decided to write it. It's certainly not comfortable to put myself out there. I've been on a ton of shows, essentially spreading the word about the concerns I have with respect to the economy to anyone who cares to listen. It's not a comfortable thing to do, but many do care what I have to say, especially those who follow me on YouTube. And I think it would have been intellectually dishonest to have these major concerns about the economy and keep them to myself. So I'm essentially doing the opposite. I've written The Age of Anomaly, and as you've noticed, it's definitely a huge book. Like it is pleasant to read. I did my best to kind of write it so that people feel they have a friend who just so happens to be good at economics talking to them. But it is a huge book nonetheless, because I know my audience, for the most part, is probably never going to read another book about financial preparedness. So I kind of went with it and did my best to write essentially the most comprehensive from A to Z type guide that I possibly could. And I did so because I believe the stakes are very high. What I'm trying to do with this book is not necessarily get people in full-on panic mode or whatever. No, I'm trying to get the message across that by all means, be an optimist in life, be a positive person, be grateful for everything you have. But when making plans, it is wise to err on the side of pessimism. And through my book, I kind of teach people how to do that and how to prepare for financial uncertainty in general in a way that doesn't interfere with your life, with your family, and all that.
Well, yeah, and I enjoyed the way that you wrote it, and I think there's certain sections where you repeat over and over again that you don't want people to just trust you or to just trust anyone. And I think that is in line exactly with my ideals, and what I think has gotten the world into a whole heap of trouble is when you trust people, when you simply adhere to the doctrine or to the dogma. So can you talk a little bit about why that's important not to do?
Well, first of all, much like yourself, I'm not afraid of saying I don't know. And that's something that's not very common in the world of economics. I don't know if you've noticed, but economists do have this tendency of doing whatever they can to seem as smart as possible, to seem as though they have all the solutions. And It would have been amazing for me to come here and have this aura of a guru around me and say, look, I know exactly I know exactly which scenario is going to unfold. So obviously there's little need to prepare for anything else because I have exactly the answer you need. And it's a humbling experience to come here in front of all these people and do so over and over again with my book launch and tell them, unfortunately, I don't know what's coming. In my book, I use this term. I don't know. I'm not sure. We cannot be certain. I use this so much because the main thing that I believe sets me apart from other economists is the fact that I embrace my incompetence. Not only do I embrace my incompetence, I make it a core pillar of my strategy. And I feel that by approaching the idea of being financially prepared from the perspective of a person who admits first and foremost to himself that he doesn't have all the answers, you're doing all of this from a position of intellectual honesty. You don't have all the answers. You're willing to explore all these possibilities. You do not. One of the main themes in my book, as you've correctly pointed out, is just that. I say to people, do your own research, do your own due diligence. If you see a guru who comes on YouTube or on TV and thinks he's an amazing forecaster, Google his name. See what other predictions he's made. And time again, you're probably going to be underwhelmed by that person's actual performance. And
yeah. No, I was going to say, absolutely. And people can take that and look at any different aspect of their life. But as I've always said, one of my biggest problems with the aura around science today is that we have all the answers. And the truth is that the reason science is so beneficial and that we have all these great gadgets and tools that we use is because science doesn't have all the answers. And that by, growing and by everybody always searching and trying to one up the most recent discovery or invention, that's how we get better. That's how we grow. And what's happened now is, science just tells you we know the distance to the sun. We know how far these planets are. We know how far these stars are. And I'm just telling people, hey, it doesn't mean that they're facts. And I want to read a section of your book here, reading from page 356. And again, I get a lot of people that send me books or want me to review and have them on the show. And usually I don't have them on because I don't think that what they're talking about is in line with things that I'm kind of focusing on. But this is what really got me about this book. And you say here, do you have any political economic beliefs? And you said, most definitely. And you said, well, I share them with you throughout this book. And you said, no. You said, let me explain first. Far too many investors make the mistake of relying on other people's opinions and predictions. And throughout this book, I've made it very clear on more than one occasion. In other words, I've constantly reminded you that blindly adopting another person's beliefs would be a huge mistake. Under such circumstances, I will refrain from sharing mine because otherwise I will be nothing more than a hypocrite. I don't write here's what to do books. I do the exact opposite. Instead of telling you what I believe and encouraging you to adopt my way of thinking, I'd rather help you figure out what is the best approach for your specific situation. Throughout this book, I don't want to convince you to adopt my political economic belief system, and therefore I won't even tell you anything about it. This book is about giving you all the tools you need to think for yourself and make your own informed decisions. And I think that that's so rare in today's world that you're right, that there's many people that want to be that guru, that want to be always right, and if they accidentally make a mistake, then they go through all these crazy steps to make it look like it wasn't, or that they didn't make a mistake, or that they didn't get something wrong. Whereas, we're all human, and I think it's fine to just say, oh, I messed that one up, and this is why. This is what I didn't see. And I think you do a great job of that, and that's why I think people should check this book out. But so you do think that there's going to be some sort of a financial crash soon. Is that an accurate statement?
Some sort of a financial crash soon, most definitely, because only once has it happened that more time passed between recessions than right now. And if another year goes by without us having a financial crash, it would be a record. So even strictly from a cyclical perspective, one could make the case that we're due or overdue a financial crash. But it's not my main concern because, of course, if humans were angels, the economy would just move up in a straight line and everything would be so predictable, but we're not. So we have the business cycle, we have these ups and downs, we go from being euphoric to becoming frightened, and this cycle just repeats itself. What I'm afraid of is that eventually one of these crashes is going to lead to a major change of narrative, because we have gotten to a point where we accept the unsustainable as status quo. Like, if you would have told people a few generations ago that nowadays having a debt to GDP ratio of 100% is extremely common among the richest countries in the world, or that Japan has over 200% and nobody really cares, or that we have this economic system that has essentially become hooked on cheap money, on injections of money into the system. Just, I don't want to overwhelm people with too many facts, but just as an idea, from 1913, when the Federal Reserve appeared, up until the Great Recession, the monetary base was in the US $850 billion or so. At the height of the quote-unquote money printing of the Federal Reserve, roughly $1 trillion per year were pumped into the system. So essentially more in 1 year than had existed after roughly 100 years of central banking. And we just accept this. You have economists from across all, the entire spectrum say, yeah, this is unconventional policy, but don't worry, we have it all under control. And that's the narrative that has been pushed time and time again. We have a crash, people are panicking, but there's no need to worry. Central banks and governments have it all under control, except at one point, the market will say that enough is enough. Because, of course, we're going to have another crash. That much is pretty much certain. And, of course, people in charge of central banks, of governments, have all the incentive in the world to want to postpone the inevitable. Because if you're the head of a central bank, the only thing you don't want is to be the guy under whom it all comes crashing down. So you're going to probably do everything in your power to just delay things as much as possible so that the next guy in charge has to deal with it and you can just retire and move on with your life. And once again, we're going to have a crisis. They are going to try to push the same narrative. Don't worry, central banks have it under control. Let's just lower interest rates, maybe bring them negative in the US like they've done in Europe and Japan. Let's pump even more money into the system. And if the market accepts, then of course we're good to go for another business cycle. But things are so unsustainable at this point, and the level of ridiculousness is already beyond absurd. And I would therefore assert that there's a very high likelihood that sooner rather than later, the market will say no to these measures. And that no is what tends to keep me up at night, because what I believe is that the no in question can only lead to one thing, which is a loss in, and the key word here is confidence. As someone who grew up in Eastern Europe, more so than people from developed countries, I've witnessed firsthand that systems fail. We've had banking panics over here. We didn't have hyperinflation, but we had very high inflation. And it just gives me goosebumps to see how the average person is so dependent on this system in the civilized world. Whether we're talking about the average household in the US, the richest country in the world, we have this study from Bankrate in 2015, I think, which said that the average family in the US would not be able to withstand a mere $500 medical emergency bill. And it's these things that give me goosebumps, because you have so many people who are barely getting by as it is during times of at least relative prosperity, that if something were to just shake the boat a little bit, then all bets are off. Because even if you live in a developed country with these various institutions that safeguard against one another and with this system that seems just so unbelievably robust, even if you do, everything hangs on by a far thinner thread than people realize. And to a large degree, that thread is confidence. Like on my YouTube channel, I explain how the banking system works. You see these banks, you see these amazing, structures, you see these well-dressed people, and it all looks so professional, so well organized, except there's no such thing as a popular bank that I know of that would be able to survive if 3 out of 10 people want their money back. It's just not going to happen because it runs on a fractional reserve system. There's just no way for it to happen. And it's this kind of thing that I personally am terrified of. Not your everyday crash, but rather what happens when this narrative changes and what this is going to do to the average person who is barely getting by as it is.
So do people not understand that? Do you think generally that they maybe think it's a conspiracy theory or something, that if we all decided today to go to the bank and pull every dollar that we have, that only 10% of those people, or only 10% of the total, would actually be tangible? Do you think this is something that people think isn't true, or do they not understand the fractional reserve banking?
You've raised a very good point initially when mentioning so many people who have predictions and then those predictions fail, they come up with excuses, they make more predictions and so on. Because the cumulative effect of all this is that the very idea of questioning our financial status quo and, broadly speaking, the very idea of trying to prepare financially has been discredited. So as far as the average person is concerned, yes. Whenever you approach him or her with an idea that even a little bit questions the status quo, like, for example, hey, banks, maybe they're not exactly as robust as you think they are, or maybe the monetary system is more dependent on confidence than you realize it is, then yes, the initial reaction, even if you manage to articulate arguments in a coherent way, the initial reaction of most people, of the overwhelming majority of average individuals, is going to be, you're going to raise, a few eyebrows are going to be raised, let's just say that. And we do need to understand why. And that's actually my biggest problem with gurus. It's not the fact that they're making fools of themselves or whatever they're doing in their career. That's their problem. It's the fact that the cumulative effect of their presence is extremely toxic for the average person, because the reality right now is, and I know it firsthand because I've been on so many interviews, and I try to have these conversations now when nobody's panicking, because this is when I can provide value. If I only hop on shows when everyone's afraid, then it's too late. And I have noticed time and time again that no matter how articulate you are, and no matter how well researched your arguments are, the average person has been conditioned to automatically assume that anything that questions the status quo, at least from a financial perspective, which is what I specialize in, that's just conspiracy theory stuff. Oh, that's not to be taken seriously. Don't worry about it. The system is perfect and it's all going to be fine.
Yeah, it's not just the financial area. It's pretty much everywhere. People have gotten too accustomed, and I think it's the way that we're taught in school, sat in desks, given books of facts, told to memorize those books of facts. And so people don't think that using their own head, thinking on their own is important. They think that the facts and the evidence will be given to you, and you just need to learn to regurgitate it or act upon it. Whereas I think a lot of it comes down to using our minds. One of the sections of the book which I thought was awesome is it's around page 115, when you start to go through the several conclusions that you can draw from the past. And I think where your book helped me is understanding a little bit better what happened as we went through from 1913 on, and basically getting an idea of why we're in the predicament that we're in. So I just wanted to go through a couple of these, and you can comment if you want, but just to give people an idea of what this book contains. But number one, he talks about bankers, traders, brokers, and insurers alike invested in something they didn't truly understand. Complex financial products based on a completely untested banking paradigm, and what contained quite a few less than optimal loans were placed on the open market, and investors pretty much fought over them to a certain point. Now, what I think is great here, so you're talking a little bit about the initial stock market, kind of, I guess not its release, but the initial offerings that were out there, and people just saw people making money. And I think, I don't know where you mentioned it, but you talked about people like Groucho Marx and also Charlie Chaplin, who went on television or movies at the time and told people about them getting rich. So then you've got all these people throughout the country saying, oh, look, stock markets are growing and it's so easy. And so they went out and invested, and then they even borrowed to get money to invest. And can you kind of go from there and tell us about what happened then?
I did my best in the third chapter of the book to provide lots of completely different case studies when it comes to context, like anything from the tulip mania, which peaked in 1633 to 1636 to 1637, to the short domain mania. I'm pretty sure I'm the only economist who even studied that one, that peaked in 2015 to 2016, so a very recent one. Then you've mentioned the idea of taking loans. Even then, in the Dutch Republic during the tulip mania, the first people who made a lot of money among regular individuals were weavers, because they had these expensive looms. They used them as collateral and essentially borrowed money against them to buy tulip bulbs. And here we are, hundreds of years later with the short domain mania of 2015 to 2016. And I distinctly remember having a conversation with a broker from China, because the interest in these domains was primarily from China, who told me how awesome it was that people were taking out high interest loans in China to speculate on these domains. And it's just crazy how even if hundreds of years go by, many of the same behavior patterns become obvious. The same way you've pointed out very correctly, the idea that people are seeing others make money and that's all they care about. Initially, believe it or not, even the tulip mania started out as something logical, in that very rich people in the Dutch Republic spent money on tulips that were extremely rare, like the Semper Augustus, of which only a few existed in the world. So in and of itself, there was nothing special. But as tulips started being worth more and more money, people accepted less and less valuable ones as investment grade. And in the end, the final people, among the final batches of people who were involved in the tulip mania, they did not care the least bit about tulips. They just saw something go up in value and wanted a piece of the action. The same principle is valid when it comes to stocks. The same principle is valid when it comes to real estate, domain names, or anything else. And history might not repeat itself 100%, or in other words, the manifestations may not be completely identical. But after going through so many case studies, and I hope I managed to illustrate it in the book, it becomes just so apparent that it's easy to draw parallels, and it's so easy, even if we're hundreds of years apart, and even if the context is completely different from tulips to domain names or stocks or real estate. We are guilty time and time again of the same things. And that's why I think people should study economic history, because it's not going to provide us with a crystal ball that enables us to predict the future. And instead, its main goal is giving us a glimpse into who we are. We study economic history to learn more about ourselves, about the mistakes we tend to make, about why we go from being overly euphoric to excessively pessimistic. And it's this better understanding of human nature that's going to yield dividends forever, because we're going to know how to position ourselves. We're going to be aware of our weaknesses. And there's just a ton of value in that, I feel.
Yeah, and we got a break coming up here momentarily. And then when we get back, we can talk a little bit more about some of these things that happened in the past that I think are important. And then I want to get into the future and actually the present. A lot of the book is dedicated, not a lot, I don't know, a good amount of it is dedicated towards cryptocurrencies. I think that's a big topic right now. And, is it another one of these .com kind of situations? So I think people would be interested in hearing your opinion of that. And then also after that, we'll get into a little bit of maybe, your top 5 suggestions for people who want to prepare themselves in the best way that they can to move forward. I like what you say about not really having, it's not like a doom scenario. It's, what do you call it? Preppers. That, you're not a prepper so much, but you think that people should be prepared. And I know going through this kind of truth movement that I've kind of gone through personally, that when you first start, that's what you hear a lot of. And I remember looking at, what can I buy to be ready, be prepared. And it's almost as if they want you to buy everything and spend every penny you have on, make sure you have bullets and you have every gun you need and you've got silver and you'll be set. So we'll be right back. Don't go anywhere. You're listening to Jeranism Monday Night Raw.
Hi there, Chris Gio here. If you're like me, you've heard many shows on TFR discussing the healing benefits of CBDs, the non-psychoactive component of the hemp plant. But with so many options out there, you've probably wasted a ton of money on hemp oils that contain alcohol, solvents, tasted horrible, or simply didn't work. That's why I'm pleased to let you know about Aya Life, a 99% pure CBD oil extract made with all organic ingredients. And best of all, it tastes great, and it works. But Aya Life is much more than just a hemp oil extract. It's a special blend of high-potency CBDs infused with B-Cappy, the non-psychoactive component of the ayahuasca tea. If you're looking to help alleviate pain, inflammation, tremors, anxiety, depression, or simply rebalance your mind, body, and soul, head on over to ayalife.com and get free shipping with coupon code TFR. That's ayalife.com, AYA life.com.
Does your basement or crawl space have a damp, musty smell? Well, watch out. That's a sign of too much moisture and not enough ventilation. And that can mean increased mold growth and the buildup of harmful toxins and gases. Don't bother with a dehumidifier. It just circulates the same unhealthy air. Now there's a better way to remove these dangers and odors. It's with the computerized Wave Moisture Control Unit that reduces moisture and expels pollutants.
We replaced our old dehumidifier with the Wave unit, and in only 3 weeks, our basement is dry and the musty smell is gone.
Wave units require no maintenance, no buckets of water or filters, and costs only pennies a day to run. Breathe better, live healthier with an affordable, no-maintenance Wave unit. Call 888-717-WAVE, 888-717-WAVE, or visit dryhealthyhome.com. Dryhealthyhome.com.
Ride the wave. Wave Home Solutions for a healthy, comfortable home.
Fear is the mind killer. Fear is the little death. This is Uncle Walt from the Ironworks. Josh, Corey, and I have chosen to look at life with no fear. No fear of the unknown. No fear of questions about the supposedly well-known. No fear of ridicule for thinking outside the familiar fool's lines. No fear of the boot on the neck of those refusing the party line. No fear of taking on those so convinced of their beliefs they would sooner drink the Kool-Aid than believe they've been fools made. In this world filled with me too, cattle think, can truth's protective layers be peeled back to show the tender, juicy pink? Are we all just grist for the mill? Souls sold against our will, or is that just how it feels? When you're filled to the rim with trivialities so fear-filled and grim, break clear of the fear right here, Tuesdays and Fridays at 2 a.m. on TFR. Josh and I and you will hammer out the impurities of technology-driven groupthink, fold in a dash of logic, and quench it all with a bit of absurdity. The Ironworks. Break clear of the fear.
No hate, no hype, no fear. We are TFR. Frequency Radio.
Welcome back. Thank you for joining me. We are live. If it is August the 6th, 2018, then today is the day, and it is live. If it's not that date, well, then you're listening to a replay. And I am here every Monday night from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. Pacific and 9 to midnight Eastern. That's every Monday right here at Truth Frequency Radio. Today we're talking with Andre Polgar. He is the author of the book, The Age of Anomaly, Spotting Financial Storms in a Sea of Uncertainty. And, you know, I'm going to paraphrase something because I remember reading it, and for the life of me, I'm thumbing through your book, and I can't find it, and I'm sure you don't know quotes per page, but I'm just going to paraphrase what you said. At one section of the book, you were talking about people who make predictions. And one thing that always scares me or makes me doubt a certain YouTuber or whomever it might be is when they make predictions, because often those predictions don't come true, and then they just come out another week and make another prediction. It's just kind of ridiculous, and then they celebrate when they get one right. And in the book, and again, this is the part that I'm paraphrasing, you were saying that imagine that you have a friend, and that this friend, drinks 6 or 7 beers every night and then goes for a 30-mile drive. And, at that point, you would see that there's a potential for disaster ahead. And if you sat down with your friend and had a, heart-to-heart and just said, hey, just so you know, you're going to get in an accident, you're going to kill yourself, you're going to kill somebody. And he says, okay, whatever, I don't listen to you. And he goes about his life and does the same thing every single night. You can have made that prediction that, he's going to eventually get in an accident. Sure enough, a month from then, 20 days from then, he will get in an accident. Now, did you predict that, or are you just simply trying to help him out by giving him some information based on the past. And I think that's what you do a good job of in this book, is not ever saying that you're making a prediction, but you're just saying, look at what happened in the past and why you think that might happen in the future. So maybe you can better explain that section, because I'm just remembering from reading this, which is now a few weeks ago, but I don't know where that is in the book. So maybe you can talk a little bit about that.
There's definitely an important distinction to be made between predictions and stating the obvious, because of course it's one thing, like what I'm doing now with my book, taking a look at the financial system and telling people, look, these are the pockets of anomalies that I see. These are the problems I see. Historically speaking, whenever we've dealt with similar problems, this is what happened. Can we be certain it's going to happen again? No, we cannot. But essentially, we owe it to ourselves to know these things, to take a look at these problems and essentially tackle them as we see fit. So that's what I try to do in the book. I try to look at things in as objective of a manner as I possibly can in order to tell people things in a stating the obvious type manner. Or in other words, I don't know, I do not know for a fact what our current economic situation will ultimately lead to, if we're going to have inflation right away, or if we're going to have deflation, or if we're going to have deflation followed by inflation. That I do not know. But I can point out major problems in the system, problems that, and I always invite people to second guess my research, to question everything I say, because if there's one goal I have with the book, is turning people into independent economic thinkers. That's my number one goal and always will be. So what I do is I tell them, look, here's how I see things. Here are the problems I'm identifying. Be sure to take a look at them yourself. If you agree with them, good. If you don't agree with them, also good. But at the end of the day, the most important thing a good economist should do is precisely not get people hooked on his predictions, not get people hooked on one strategy or another that he spoon feeds them. Because way too many people on the internet make this mistake. I'm talking about economists or financial gurus in general here. And it reinforces a very negative way of seeing life among the people he's targeting. Because I don't want my readers to feel that, they're sheep and I'm in charge of herding them. They know nothing, I know everything, and they should just tap into my brain and extract value from there, because there's no way they can come up with good stuff themselves. No, they can actually, and I continuously stress this in the book, they live with themselves 24/7. So no matter how much time I were to spend with them to try to get to know them and thereby put together a better strategy for their needs, they're still going to be in a better position to put together their own strategy than I am. So that's what I try to do with my work. I try to focus less on, surrounding myself with an aura of, he can do no wrong. And instead, I want to empower people to think for themselves. People have it in them. Once they get accustomed to seeing things in an analytical manner, and you're very good at this. I like that about you. Your curious nature, your way of questioning things. By embracing these things, by internalizing them, and by moving away. Once again, you've pointed out very correctly, everything in our lives, the education system, the feedback loop when it comes to the people in our lives, and so on. All of these things are not very good at making us economic thinkers. They're good at making us consumers. They're good at making us, people who need to be controlled by that entity or the other entity. So it is a leap to venture outside your comfort zone and say, wait a second, I know the education system has conditioned me to just blindly believe this and that, to just blindly say, oh, come on, these central bankers are brilliant economists. They've written so many books. They're so smart. They know exactly what to do and everything's perfect. It's a huge leap to kind of question these things yourself. But it's the only way.
Yeah, I totally agree. One thing that I hear often, and I used to hear it, and actually I might have even used to believe it, that at some point in the future, that it would be possible that the dollar would go away. Now, what I mean by that is I've heard people talking about it, that, the dollar will crash, or there's been other countries where basically whatever their unit of their monetary unit is exchanged for something else, or they get rid of it completely, or it becomes to the point where, it takes billions to buy anything, so they have to change it. I guess my question to you would be, do you foresee that as being a possibility in this country? I'm talking the United States, with the U.S. dollar, or will the U.S. dollar be here for all of our lifetimes? Yeah, maybe it'll lose half its value, or 90% of its value. I'm just kind of wondering your opinion on the U.S. dollar, and based on your research and what you've seen happen in the past.
Would it be possible that the US dollar spirals into hyperinflation directly? Yes, simply because nothing is impossible. But it is very, very unlikely, for the simple reason that there is no historic precedent of this. And people are frequently, when I say this to them, people are quick to point out the example of Germany, of the Weimar Republic. But it's not a good example, because by the time Germany went through its situation with hyperinflation, they had lost a war. They had to deal with debilitating conditions after the Treaty of Versailles. They had to essentially have one of the regions occupied and support the strike of the workers, and essentially they were weakened from all possible directions. So what I'm trying to tell people is that there is no historic precedent of a powerful country which went from being powerful to going through hyperinflation. There just isn't. What tends to happen, and this could happen very well in the United States as well, but it's going to take time for these things to manifest themselves. What tends to happen is that a once powerful country becomes weakened by something like losing a war, by something like, whatever chain of events can weaken a country, and only once it has been weakened enough does it become a candidate for hyperinflation. So what we do know is that for the most part, there are two types of countries that are prone to hyperinflation. One, once powerful countries that for one reason or another have become severely weakened, as was the example with, Germany. And two, of course, countries like Zimbabwe. I actually have one of their dollar bills behind me. Countries that have always been weak, and as such are prime candidates for hyperinflation. So while I do not rule out any possibility, I would say that if you are to be worried about things that have to do with the United States, the currency spiraling into hyperinflation, I don't think it should be one of your top concerns.
So what would happen if, because I think what the scenario is that most people believe is possible or imminent or could happen, would be one in which the world currency is changed away from the dollar. So can you kind of talk about that, or what you would expect to see if that were ever the case? Say that the Brexit or some group of countries decided that going forward they were no longer going to use the dollar as the reserve currency.
Of course, these things are bound to happen, and kind of to play on what I've said before, they are all part of the longer-term trend, which will eventually result in even a country like as powerful as the United States is right now, eventually becoming weak enough to be a candidate for all sorts of problems. Because yes, we have more and more countries that are trying to bypass the United States in trade. We, of course, have China that is emerging, and it's very hard to stop that trend as a major superpower, and this situation is here to stay. So yes, there are things that will eventually chip away at the dollar's status as the world reserve currency. But what I would stress is, at least as I perceive it, it's not something acute. It's not something that can immediately generate something as, as dramatic as hyperinflation. No. If anything, it is something, it is a big picture type concern, which should make you think as a, as an objective analyst who's just looking at the facts. Yes, indeed, these are the things that are going to eventually make the dollar become less important than it is now. There are going to be consequences when it comes to the economy of the United States as well, and it's one of the factors that can weaken a country such as the United States. And the cumulative effect of all sorts of factors like this one can indeed ultimately, but it does tend to take a decent while, bring a country, make a country weak enough for something like hyperinflation to occur. But will the dollar lose its reserve currency status? Of course it will. Will the United States eventually have to share the worldwide scene with other players because, especially when it comes to China, it's just unavoidable? Of course. These things will come into play. It's extremely hard for me to envision what could happen for these trends to just stop, but they're going to most likely take a bit more time than people realize.
Right. I remember telling a friend once when he was talking about, the dollar would crash and this. And I told him, yeah, but $100 will always be worth more than one. Like no one's ever going to get to the point where they'll just give you a $100 bill and you give them a one and they just like say, oh, well, the money means nothing. Because there is that trust built into it to where that piece of paper with the 100 on it is, worth more than the piece of paper with the one on it. And I think it will always be that way. Well, go ahead.
Yeah, for sure, because the currency does, if you wanted to, you can still take a very, very, very old $100 bill and spend it. And it's more than people can say about many European countries, for example. So yeah, the dollar has a lot of built-in trust. And even if it is not backed by something tangible, even if it's not backed by gold, or as was the case with Germany after they recovered from hyperinflation, they had the Rentenmark, which was backed by real estate. Even if it's not backed by something tangible, it's backed by something meaningful, which is a proven track record of people having valid reasons to be confident in the United States dollar. And it's not indestructible by any means. There are things that can chip away at this foundation, but yeah, I think you've been correct in pointing out to your friend that if you are to have concerns about the United States, and of course, just like with any other country, there are major concerns associated with the United States, but not these.
Yeah, I just was, just trying to point out to him that I could not picture that point. Can I picture the dollar going away as a reserve currency? Yes. Can I picture something terrible happening where it loses a lot of its value? Yes. But can I ever picture a day where $100 bills and $1 bills are just the same thing? No, I can't picture that. So let's get into a little bit about Bitcoin, because I think it's a hot topic right now, or cryptocurrency in general. Can you tell people a little bit about, maybe just a little bit about when cryptocurrency jumped on the scene, and do you see it as an early point of the speculation, or is it too late for people, or just kind of give your opinion as an economist of Bitcoin?
Well, essentially, the first cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, appeared in 2009 as something that started to be used. And many people adopted it precisely because they had concerns. They no longer had confidence in the status quo. And so they said, look, wouldn't it be great if we had this decentralized currency that has nobody to control it? Bitcoin, as many joke, doesn't have a CEO you can complain to. It's just decentralized in nature. So there's definitely a ton of value in that. And as time passed, more and more people have adopted it. But as frequently happens when it comes to technology, and in my book I do point it out, whether we're talking about .com stocks, whether we're talking about railway stocks in the 1800s in the United Kingdom, we do tend to get a bit carried away, which is why Bitcoin has had these very aggressive boom and bust cycles. Just to give you a quick example, for example, when it famously went from $1 to $31, then crashed to $2, before stabilizing at $2, it actually traded, and there's footage of this on YouTube, people can search for it, it actually traded for a cent for a brief period of time. The same way, then we had the bull run, which culminated in 2013. Then we had the high of December last year of 20,000. So I think cryptocurrencies have tremendous potential, but they're not going to solve all your problems. And that the number one thing I tell people is that I can definitely think of scenarios in which crypto surpasses anything else as an option. Like, for example, if you live in a country like Syria, right? You're an engineer, your wife is an accountant. Your wealth is the home you live in, your car, $10,000 worth of precious metals, and one Bitcoin that you overpaid for in December last year. You paid $20,000 for it, and now you feel so bad. Well, let's assume something happens and you have to flee that country. What happens to your wealth is that your real estate essentially goes to zero because you have to leave it behind. The same way you're probably not going to travel from Syria to Germany or your destination country by car, so the value of that will probably eventually go to zero because you're going to have to leave it at one point or another behind. Your precious metals are great because they're portable, but throughout your journey from a country like Syria to a very far away destination country, it's very likely that your precious metals will be confiscated at the border, stolen from you, or otherwise taken away. When it comes to crypto, for example, it's great that you can have access to it without having anything physical on your person. As long as you remember a few strings of words, you can have access to your crypto. And essentially, as ironic as it may seem, that one Bitcoin that you overpaid for in December of last year might be just what helps your family get a fresh start. I mean, would you become filthy rich in your new country? No. But that one Bitcoin would be enough to pay rent for a few months, give you enough time to get a job, and kind of get back on your feet. The same way, however, I can think of other scenarios like the fragmentation of the internet or scenarios which involve us losing internet access, in which I would much rather be holding physical precious metals than cryptocurrencies. So what I try to tell people is that if you are tech savvy enough to be able to use a smartphone, then I do believe it is a good idea to research cryptocurrencies a little bit and maybe make it a goal to have a little bit of exposure to them, only as, a hedge, if you will.
Right.
But what people need to understand is that the blockchain is not going to solve all your problems. The blockchain is good at solving certain problems, and cryptocurrencies represent a good solution for certain situations. And it's on you to kind of include them in your bigger picture plan.
Yeah, I totally agree, and I think you do an excellent job in the book, and that's why I'll recommend it to people. Is he does an excellent job of explaining that what he just did, and then also reminding you that it's all about diversity, that you have to have, and that goes for everything. Putting your eggs in one basket is a problem. It usually will come back to bite you, and financially it definitely would. And for me, as in 2013, many people know, I wrote for two Bitcoin websites, CryptoCoin News and BitScan, and I was the safety and security writer. And at the time, I was so big on Bitcoin as being the changing medium. It's going to solve all of our problems. This was my thought process. And it wasn't until I realized that with everything comes these inherent problems. And one of the problems with Bitcoin is the idea of being anonymous. That a lot of people, they want anonymity. They want anonymous methods of payments, or they want well, that's great. But with that comes scam artists. And what happens is people are blindsided by this, and then they quickly change their mind, going from, I want this anonymity, I want an anonymous pay method. Then when somebody steals from you, then you want to find out who that person is immediately and contact the cops or the police. And that's not really possible with Bitcoin. And so I saw it happening to where people were, for one reason or another, losing boatloads of money. And I didn't want to be responsible for ever recommending something to someone that could be potentially, account draining. Whereas, like you just described, also in a situation where you leave this country and you leave all your assets behind, and you're like, thank goodness I have this Bitcoin, but oops, I forgot the password. Well, guess what? No one can save you. And this is something we've gotten so accustomed to. Is this idea of, I forgot my password, and then they email you a link and you click it and you go and you make a new one. And that's not necessarily the case with a lot of Bitcoin, in the fact that you're the only one with that private key. If you lose it, it's gone. You might be able to pay a hacker a bunch of money to spend, a ton of time on a computer, but it depends. If your password is, 15 digits or something like that, there's no, computer that's going to break that, or at least nobody's going to allow a computer to spend all that time that it would take to break it. So, I definitely like that the book does a good job of explaining the way we need to diversify things. But I think that you're right when you say if you can understand a telephone or a cell phone, and you can understand computers and how they work, then it is a good idea for you to look into Bitcoin, because I do think the blockchain, while it may not be the answer, wouldn't you agree that it is one of the technologies to come around in the last few years that will be world-changing going forward? Would you agree with that?
Most definitely. And the number one thing I tell people about cryptocurrencies is crypto is not what you want it to be. Crypto is what it is. It's great at offering solutions to certain problems. It's great at giving you an option to diversify and get exposure to assets that complement one another nicely. It's great at doing this for you. As long as you understand that it's never going to solve all your problems, it's all going to be fine, but you need, if you're serious about getting into crypto, you need to accept the cons as well. You need to accept that, as you've pointed out, there's nobody you can contact to get your password back. It's on you to make sure you use the proper wallets, the proper exchanges, the proper people, to be careful who you interact with, because once you send a Bitcoin, you cannot charge that back. So as long as you're able to make these informed decisions, I think you're going to be fine. Just don't make the mistake of assuming that Bitcoin is automatically going to be everything you want it to be. No, it is what it is, and you have to accept that.
Right. Yeah, no, too many people think that, or they don't understand how easy it is to set up a store online under a certain domain name, which costs the person, sometimes you can get them from GoDaddy or something, 99 cents. So somebody can set up a website and use somebody else's script and basically have a working website for, $10. That they can just put up, and it says right on there, we accept Bitcoin or whatever, and you go there and you think you're shopping and you think that you're buying something, and you click to pay, and you pay with Bitcoin, and that money will be gone. And believe it or not, in a couple days, so will the website. And you may look at it and say, but I only bought something that was $115. How would that? Well, when you're a scam artist, turning $10 into $115 is like any other business. That's a huge profit margin. And so I think people just need to remember that with Bitcoin comes more research and more. I mean, you should never send your money to anyone without researching them. Whereas with the dollar and with PayPal and with these different institutions, you can feel a little safer. That if you send money to a website that accepts PayPal and it goes through the PayPal servers and it's all under SSH or whatever, then what you're going to have there is, if that money is stolen, then the likelihood of you getting it back is much stronger, because you can call PayPal and say, hey, I paid this company, and they'll shut down their PayPal account and give you back that money. In the most cases, in some cases, that isn't the fact. And I learned the hard way. I used to do, by the way, we have a break coming up here, and when we get back, we'll get back to hearing some more about this. But also, do you mind if we take some calls? Do you want to take calls from anybody if they have questions for you? Or okay. So sure. in the next half hour, if you want to call in, please, for this next half hour at least, make sure that your questions are for Andre. It's 831. I'm sorry, that's my number. 213-233-3998. Again, that's 213-233-3998. So if you want to get in line, just taking questions for Andre regarding finances and those kind of things. But anyway, I forgot what I was talking about. Well, we're talking about crypto, and I was just saying that when you get to one of these sites and you send away your money, it's definitely safer right now to use something like PayPal or something that's regulated, even though a lot of us will be out there saying, well, I hate the regulation, and I hate the banks, and I hate having people involved in my finances. And like Andre just said, if you're going to send your sister $1,000, then I think it's better to use Bitcoin, because that is anonymous. That is a transaction that I can send out over to my sister, and nobody needs to know that I ever sent her $1,000 or that she received $1,000. It's between us. But if you start getting involved in PayPal and things like that, well, then that changes a little bit. There's a record of that transaction. So we got a break. We'll be right back. Don't go anywhere. We got another half hour with Andre Polgar on Jeranism Monday Night Raw.
Hi, my name is Ella, and I'm 10 years old. I'm one of the millions of children born to parents suffering from the sheeple virus. Symptoms include the inability to think for oneself, the attention span of a goldfish, and a strong belief in government and the mainstream media. It is estimated that 1 out of every 2 children are being raised by parents infected with the sheeple virus. But there is a cure. For as little as 19 cents per day, you can become a TFR supporter and help children like me get their daily dose of truth. Together, we will make sure every child has protection from deception.
The Manafort trial, the Russia probe. I'm Ann Cates. The prosecution's star witness has taken the stand in the tax and bank fraud trial of former Trump campaign manager Paul Manafort. Correspondent Kara Scannell reports on the testimony of Rick Gates.
He told the jury that he committed several crimes with Paul Manafort. He described that he had lied to Manafort's accountants. He had helped him create false tax returns. He had created fake loans, and he also listed the names of multiple shell companies, over a dozen, that he set up with Manafort and that they never disclosed to the IRS.
President Trump is being urged to stop tweeting about a gathering that is at the center of the Russia probe. Correspondent Jeff Zeleny on the president's latest account.
More explicitly than before, he's zeroing in on a 2016 Trump Tower meeting between his son Donald Trump Jr., top campaign officials, and a Russian lawyer promising dirt on Hillary Clinton. This was a meeting to get information on an opponent, totally legal and done all the time in politics, and it went nowhere. I did not know about it. That Sunday tweet was the most direct acknowledgement yet for the real purpose of the meeting, which is now part of Special Counsel Robert Mueller's inquiry.
Thousands of firefighters continue to tackle major wildfires around California, including one near a national park. Correspondent Dave Alpert.
Large parts of Yosemite will remain closed indefinitely due to smoke and haze from the nearby Ferguson fire. The National Park Service says while Yosemite Valley and other parts of the park have not been threatened by the fire, all roads in and out are blocked. The closure comes at the height of the summer season, forcing thousands of tourists to change their vacation plans.
The Carr Fire in Northern California has charred 163,000 acres, destroyed 1,100 homes, and is 45% contained. The death toll from that blaze has risen to 7. On Wall Street, the Dow Jones Industrial Average rose 40 points. The S&P 500 gained 10. The Nasdaq closed up 48. I'm Ann Cates.
You must unite what has been set asunder.
We are TFR. Truth Frequency Radio.
On the weekday, don't be surprised, don't be surprised. Walk like us. They even talk like us. Walk like us. But they are not like us. On the weekday, you can see the signs, you can see the signs. They wear the disguise. Look into the mind's eye. There's nowhere to hide. No stick-covered lines. Whispers from afar.
All right, welcome back. You're listening to Jeranism Monday Night Raw. We're on with Andre Polgar, the author of The Age of Anomaly, Spotting Financial Storms in a Sea of Uncertainty. We do have the phone lines open. If you've got a question for the next half hour, it has to be for Andre. And that phone number is 213-233-3998. If you have other questions, comments, or concerns, save those for after this half hour, as we will go forward with the show for other reasons. But Andre, I guess we could start out with, or at least continue with, your kind of suggestion or top 5 things that you think people need to think about or worry about in the coming years, and then also you should tell them where they can find the book, and also what was your first book and where they can find that. So go ahead and move us forward with that.
Sure. Some practical advice for people who want to position themselves properly is just keep things logical. So what I do in my book is I tell them, look, brush up on your economic history, establish a solid foundation of information about economic history, and that way you are going to have an amazing reference point. 1. 2, you couple that amazing reference point with a little bit of a willingness to stay on top of current events, and I help people do even that in the book. I have sub-chapters about how to make the most out of alternative media, how to make the most out of mainstream media. And by coupling these two, essentially, you will no longer be watching the news like you're watching a movie, and instead, you're going to know exactly when to be concerned and when not, or at least when it makes more sense to be concerned. You have this happening today on the news. If you know for a fact that something similar happened 50 years ago, something similar happened 100 years ago, then you might have valid reasons to decide to do more research. And definitely this distinct combination between having a proper reference point when it comes to economic history, coupled with the willingness to stay on top of current events, it's going to make it you're basically going to have your ear to the ground, so to speak. Third, you need to work on things that are related to your mindset. Now, as someone who started from scratch in life, who lost all his money and then started back from scratch, I know how difficult it can be, for example, to cope with financial losses, which is why in my book I do pay attention to this dimension as well, to things which revolve around me providing investing related wisdom, mindset related tips. Because if you are not well organized upstairs, there are going to be problems. And don't make the mistake of assuming that you can afford to neglect that part. Next, after drawing conclusions when it comes to economic history, after finding common denominators, we are going to be able to kind of come up with a strategy which involves anything from content consumption to gaining knowledge and so on, a strategy which increases the likelihood that you will spot the next financial crisis as early on as possible. But, and this is extremely important, while the first dimension of my book, of course, is all about positioning yourself and doing your best to become better at spotting financial calamities, the second one is about the exact opposite, about how important it is to have the humility it takes to realize that you're not perfect. And as such, based on the information I'm going to provide in the book, put together your own strategy. If, for example, you live in a politically unstable country and are a regime change away from having your real estate confiscated, I'm obviously going to be reluctant when it comes to recommending real estate. The same way in other countries, it might be an excellent deal. So what I try to do in the second part of my book is go through each asset class, one at a time and tell people, I don't have a perfect solution for you, but I can tell you everything I know about stocks. Here are the pros, here are the cons. Here is how to decide whether or not it's a good decision for you. The same way, let's talk about bonds. Let's talk about precious metals. Let's talk about everything, from traditional asset classes like the ones I've mentioned to newer ones like domain names, cryptocurrencies, peer-to-peer lending. I'm a firm believer in giving people this big picture perspective and getting the message across that you don't have to fall in love with one asset class or another, or you don't have to assume that just because you happen to have an affinity towards cryptocurrencies, you have to consider precious metals arch enemies or the other way around. By giving people this big picture perspective, they will essentially have their very own strategy deeply ingrained in their subconscious. They're going to know, okay, for someone in my situation, it makes sense to invest in this asset for this reason, for that reason. It makes sense to invest in the other asset for this reason, for that reason. And before you know it, you will be on a continuous shopping spree because, once again, it takes time to position yourself properly. You cannot go from being someone who doesn't care at all about the financial dimension of his life to being financially secure just like that. It's going to take time. And essentially, that's what the second part of my book is all about. Helping people put together this strategy and gradually execute it. In the end, it's knowledge that I like to tell everyone gives you clarity, and clarity will enable you, as Warren Buffett points out, to be fearful when others are greedy and greedy when others are fearful. I know it's a bit cliche, but it does make sense. And essentially, when people are going to become overly optimistic with the markets, when everyone thinks they're going to get rich, as happens throughout history, you're going to have the clarity it takes to say, wait, it's time to take some profits off the table. The same way, when prices collapse and people are buying and selling their portfolios and panicking, you're going to say, wait a second, I've been following this stock for so long. I think there's potential there. So maybe it's time to go bargain hunting. So in the end, it's all of these pieces of the puzzle that end up turning you gradually into an independent economic thinker and into a person who is well on track to becoming financially secure. I wish it would be possible for me to tell people I have a quick fix for them and that if they buy the Age of Anomaly, all their problems are going to go away. No. I have a proper framework for them to work with, but they're going to have to put in a bit of work. I do my best, of course, to find, the optimal dose as to how involved people should be in these things, but you will have to put in the work. However, the stakes, I believe, are very high, and I in my life I've run a ton of businesses. I've invested in quite a few assets. I've been involved in many industries. I'm also an economist, and if it's one thing I've learned is that showing up and doing something is more than half the battle. And this is what I think our listeners, as a bit of the main takeaway should understand. From a financial perspective, once again, which is my area of expertise, you can achieve so much by doing so little as long as you have this willingness to prepare when nobody's panicking. Unfortunately, most people don't. Most people get caught up in their day-to-day distractions, their Netflix, their jobs, their families, and that's perfectly understandable. But unfortunately, when disaster strikes, nobody's going to knock on your door and say, hey, I've been thinking about crashing the system. Is it okay if I do it now, or should I return 6 months from now when you have time to prepare? Unfortunately, when disaster strikes, it strikes. You're not going to be able to plead ignorance. Nobody's going to care that you were busy. And it's going to be every man for himself. So I, therefore, would strongly recommend working on your financial preparedness and being more than willing to do it a year or two early than be a week too late. And the same way, like when it comes to my book, I reduced the price of the book. I've organized the contest with some awesome prizes, including lots of crypto stuff, if people win the contest. And I do these things to kind of get the message across that my book launch is not a funeral. I'm an optimist. If you take a look at my YouTube channel, you're going to see that it's all positive. I'm all about helping people gain knowledge, and I'm all about being excited for helping people gain knowledge. However, the fact remains that, in my opinion, the wise thing to do is be an optimist in life, be grateful for what you have and all these things. But when making plans, and this is what I teach people through the Age of Anomaly, be pessimistic, be thorough, and make sure you have all your bases covered.
Yeah, I don't think anything is more important than that you never want to look back and say, I wish I would have done this, or so sometimes we can prepare by kind of, making sure we maybe take care of some things we otherwise would think we don't need to, but you're kind of just preparing. And, I can't think of very many times in my life where I've gotten to a certain place and said, oh man, I really wish I wouldn't have prepared well for that. It's never the case. It's always the case where you are upset at yourself for not preparing. And so anybody who's telling you to, and different ways to do it. And like he said earlier, I think it's great where he tells you that, I'm not one of those people that thinks that everything on the mainstream news is a lie. Now, I do think that a majority of it is a lie. But what he does a good job of explaining in this book is that we have to be able to hear different opinions or different viewpoints. And the more that you hear, the more information you have, the better you can come out with, at least some semblance of truth. And so for me, I can watch the mainstream news and not just hear a story and say, well, that must be fake, but actually hear the story and then go look for other sources and kind of build for myself what I think is the truth. And then eventually, if I get to the place where I no longer see a mainstream news channel as ever providing truth, then I can choose to not watch them. But I think he does a good job of pointing out that you can't just take alt news and say, well, that's definitely false because mainstream news says alt news is false. And you can't just take the position of, well, mainstream news is false because, as I've often pointed out, if I went through the town right now and shot up 50 people with a gun, it's going to be on the news. And that's not a false thing. So to just say, well, the mainstream news carried it, so it's false, is not the best way to do it either. But I think you do a good job of kind of, having that, weighing that both sides or having both options. I guess that would be my question to you is how did you come to that point where you did realize that it's not just what you were taught in school, It's not just what the mainstream news teaches you. It's not just what status quo says. How did you get to see that the other side is equally as important, and it's the combination of both that really will help you move forward?
One of my biggest pet peeves when it comes to economics is precisely that people are so quick to pick sides, and part of my research when it comes to my PhD has been just that, making it clear that maybe being a political activist and being an economist is not the best combination in the world, yet so many people are guilty of that. Instead, what I prefer to do, and it wasn't easy at the beginning, but I've continuously made it a goal to expose myself to dramatically different viewpoints. Like, I believe there's just so much value in talking to someone who's on, a completely different page than you when it comes to something very important, ideology related to you. Of course, the problem is whenever you are talking to someone and he says things that question your beliefs, then your initial reaction will be gut-wrenching. It's not a pleasant thing to do, but I believe that it's a muscle that you can train. And as an economist who believes it's important to have to see the big picture, I went from feeling like I have to wash my hands after being exposed to an opinion that was so different than compared to my way of seeing the world. I went from that to being grateful to the person who's sharing that opinion with me for giving me the opportunity to see the problem through his lens, because it's these things combined that contribute to your mental elasticity, and it's just so unbelievable how better off you're going to be in the long run if you just establish this healthy habit of willingly exposing yourself to different viewpoints. I cannot even imagine how much better off the world would be if more of us would have this willingness to venture outside our bubbles, to venture outside of our comfort zones, which revolve around us just consuming content that we agree with and never daring to have our beliefs questioned. The world would be a lot better off. And this is the battle I'm fighting. Whether it's telling people that precious metals and crypto don't have to be arch enemies, whether it's telling people that, wait a second, economists from the left as well as economists from the right deserve to be heard. And maybe in one situation, one has decent arguments, in one situation, another, or in some situations, both of them. The main thing I'm preaching through my work is it tends to revolve around mental elasticity, around your willingness to accept your limitations, to accept the fact that by understanding your limitations, you automatically should be willing to gather feedback from as many sources as possible in order to kind of see the big picture. And like many other things that I am recommending to people, it's not something that is going to be easy right away. And some people might find it peculiar that I have a section about making the most out of mainstream media in a book about economics, or making the most out of alternative media in a book about economics. But I could not imagine writing a intellectually honest book such as The Age of Anomaly without tackling these issues, because they're related to our lives. If you're not able to meaningfully change your perspective when it comes to this topic, how you consume content, how you stay informed, how you choose which sources of information are worth your attention and which aren't, it's impossible to become the independent economic thinker I want you to become if you don't become better at these things as well. So occasionally in my book, I do challenge people. I do tell them, look, I'm sorry, it's time to venture outside your comfort zone. I know it's not the most pleasant thing in the world, but by focusing on economics as a labor of love, as something I was passionate about, and always doing it from a position of relative financial comfort and knowing I don't rely on this income to pay the bills, and therefore I can afford to do whatever I want with my work, this gives me the luxury of telling people what I think they should know, not what they want to hear. This gives me the luxury of, not wanting to please my audience, whatever it takes. It gives me the luxury of saying, okay, I'm sorry, but now we have to do something difficult. I'm sorry, but now I'm going to maybe question your belief system a bit. And in the end, I think that's maybe even the number one thing I provide in value through my book. I provide this big picture perspective that, coupled with the humility it takes to understand that we cannot know everything, that we are not above failure, that's what makes the difference between someone who lands on his feet and someone who doesn't. there are always going to be gurus in the world of economics. There are always going to be people who claim they know everything. And those people are always, unfortunately, going to have a following, because at the end of the day, that's one of the things we're guilty of. We find a pack leader and we blindly follow them him or her in a lot of cases. And that's fine. But I brand myself as the guy who's always here. Like, I tell people, okay, if you want to try, the guru of the month in the world of economics, that's your prerogative. Feel free to do so. But when you realize that the guru in question is not the right solution for you, and that the idea of looking for a guru to follow in and of itself is toxic, I'm going to still be here.
Yeah, we're really well said. And you're a lot like me in that, I like to talk and I like to discuss, and no one knows everything. And I know that. And so many people seem not to know that, or they think that these particular people in different areas in science or economics know everything about that certain subject. And I just don't think it's true. And you said it so good there that, you're always appreciative of those with other views or outside ideas. And so am I. And I think that that's what makes being a human truly unique, is that we have the ability to look at situations or history, or it could be just the evidence that's presented to you, and to actually weigh different ideas and come up with your conclusion based on what you're presented. And so many people today have given that away to other people and said, no, I will just believe what my pastor tells me, or I will just believe what mainstream news tells me, and you just go forward through life like that. And I think you've been robbed of one of the truly human elements in our life, is that intelligence to actually make up your own mind. And some people have gotten in the way of that and said, no, we will tell you everything that's true. But that's the problem that I noticed with the world when I started on YouTube, is I did not think that there would be so much backlash when somebody spoke against the going narrative. And in telling people, my issues with the globe and why I thought that the earth could be flat, one of the biggest things to me was the response was hugely derogatory. People who didn't know me from anyone call me every name in the book. I'm a swindler, I'm a thief, I'm a liar, I'm a scam artist. And it was like, what? Just because I said something different than we've all been taught. And I was really shocked, because I'm open to other ideas. In fact, that's how I build my beliefs, is I want to hear everybody else's beliefs. And sometimes I hear them and I think that person's crazy. But I certainly do not then go on an attack of, now let me try and attack this person and bring them down to their knees to show them how wrong they are. It's not like that for me. I just want to hear their opinion. And when I hear it, I either weigh it with my reality, and I can easily push it aside if it doesn't match at all. And I was absolutely shocked at the amount of people that are incapable of doing that. The amount of people who will just come back and call you every name in the book and tell you, get a physics book, you retard. And it was shocking to me. And so, reading this book was a pleasant surprise, in that you talk a lot about those things and saying that every outside perspective is just another bit of evidence for building your kind of repertoire, or building your arsenal. You want as much information as possible. You don't want just what you read in a book,
Exactly. And I've been through enough things in my life to kind of realize that essentially not everything unfolds in a linear manner. Like, my life is a good example. If someone would have told me 10 years from now that I would be on this major tour of being all over YouTube, in the podcast scene as well, with my new book that I write in English, and having a YouTube channel where I make videos in English, and all of this being a career path chosen by some random dude in Romania, I would have told him it's crazy. And my life has essentially been all about being willing to question the status quo and essentially make the right decisions for myself. Like, I distinctly remember I was always good at foreign languages. So I was at this national competition for German, and there were so many bright kids there, people who were passionate about foreign languages, kids who deserved nothing but the best. And they had us in these filthy rooms. We didn't have proper warm water. It was just awful. And then it kind of clicked to me that, wait a second, is this the best the status quo can do for me? And if so, wouldn't it perhaps be better for me to think for myself and choose my own path in life? And I did. And the results have been amazing. So it's always important to understand that if you develop this habit of questioning the status quo, great things can happen. You don't have to have your mind made up, but you should, whether we're talking about economics or anything else, if you don't have the mental strength it takes to accept different viewpoints, you're going to be decimated in life. And people who, resort to personal attacks on the internet and stuff like that, that comes from a, underlying weakness, an underlying sense of insecurity. How dare you question my beliefs? How dare you put me in the position of having to think that something I've taken for granted throughout my entire existence might not be true? I'm going to have a visceral reaction towards you for daring to do that. Unfortunately, yeah, it's a very common thing. And what we can do, what I try to do with my books, is try to contribute to the best of my ability to the public discourse with things like what I've said today, with my way of seeing life, with my way of analyzing information, with my willingness with my openness when it comes to embracing my incompetence, when it comes to predicting the future, with the fact that I agree I can never know everything, with the fact that I'm grateful for people who are able to, in one way or another, question my strongest beliefs, because maybe I'm going to agree with them, maybe I'm not, but you win. You win by just having the willingness it takes to listen to people who question your beliefs. No matter what happens next, it's that willingness that if you display it, you can consider yourself a winner in life. So
wow, really well said. And just so we don't miss the break here, tell everybody, by the way, we've been talking to Andre Polgar. He's the author of The Age of Anomaly, Spotting Financial Storms in a Sea of Uncertainty. He has a YouTube channel. And why don't you tell people real quick what your YouTube channel is, where they can get the book, and how they can maybe enter those contests you talked about?
Sure. The book is called The Age of Anomaly. They can just search for it on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, iBooks, and Kobo. Or, of course, they can visit ageofanomaly.com, a small website which contains all of those links. And my contest with some pretty awesome prizes, including 1 Bitcoin, which is the #1 prize. I basically reward people for spreading the word about my book. Anyone with even a Facebook account can qualify. And to find out more about it, they can head over to youtube.com/1 Minute Economics. They're going to see a video out there with the full rules, what they need to do, what they can do. And yeah, if they buy the book, if they think it's interesting enough to be worth their attention, I would recommend doing it this week, because to kind of prove to everyone that I genuinely don't care about the money when it comes to these projects, until Sunday, the 12th of August, it's just going to cost 99 cents, which is essentially me giving it away for free, but also saying, I want you to symbolically invest these 99 cents to have some skin in the game and thereby be more willing to listen to what I have to say.
Wow. So the PDF of the book, The Age of Anomaly, is 99 cents?
Yep.
Wow. I did not know that. Yeah, it's a great book. And for those people who like to read like I do, but then again, where I have a problem is sometimes when a book is too technical, I feel like I'm more confused at the end of reading a chapter than I was going into it. That's never something that's good. So I tend to move towards books where I can at least follow along. And I think in this book, it was exciting. Every chapter, I was just kept reading on because it was easy to read. It's not that it's written for children. It's absolutely a book written for adults in every way, but it just is digestible. There wasn't too much coming at me. So I appreciate you being on, Andre. We'll talk again soon. And everybody else, stay tuned for more Jeranism Monday Night Raw. Thanks, Andre.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Extendivite really works. Just listen to what some people have to say.
About 6 months ago, my wife bought Extendivite. She didn't tell me she was giving it to me. So after about 3 days, I said, maybe the weather's changed or something. I said, my legs feel really good. And she goes, well, I've been giving you this stuff, and it was the Extendivite. And you know that I'm about 75% better. I can actually climb stairs now, and I can get up out of chairs. I can even get down and, I got to work under a table or a computer table and work on a computer. I can actually get back up off the floor. You know what? It's an amazing product. I can't believe, I didn't think anything short of having surgery was going to help.
Extendivite is only $69.95 for a 2-month supply of either capsules or liquid. Call now. That's 1-877-928-8822 or visit heartdrop.com.
Extend your life with Extendivite.
This is iHeartRadio.
iHeartRadio.
iHeartRadio makes you want to move.
When you have a great melody, a song can last forever. Instantly connected.
I love it when the beat goes.
Did you know you can listen to Truth Frequency Radio on iHeartRadio? Just download the app to your smart car, smartphone, or smart TV and get the best of TFR wherever you are.
iHeartRadio.
I'll see you there.
So, you love talk radio? Then you'll love TalkStreamLive.com. TalkStream Live is always on, 24/7 with the best streaming talk shows. Find your favorite talkers and discover some new ones. It's free, readily available online or on mobile with any smartphone or tablet. Finding your favorite talk shows all in one place has gotten a whole lot easier. Just go to TalkStreamLive.com. Be sure to download the free apps from Google Play or the iTunes App Store.
We exist in the security and comfort of our worlds. Paved paths, lights, and manicured lawns give us peace of mind that our world has been tamed, and we are its master. But other worlds exist on the edge of our sight. On the edge of our awareness, the shadows move. The woods fill with the unblinking eyes of the nightmares our ancestors warned us about. Some of us have stumbled into these forgotten realms, whether on purpose or completely by surprise. I'm Brent Thomas. Join us on the Paranormal Portal Friday and Saturday nights from 10 p.m. to midnight Pacific Standard Time as we journey into the world of the paranormal phenomena.
Enter the Paranormal Portal if you dare.
You're listening to the Truth Frequency Radio Network.
No hate, no hype, no fear.
I do welcome you back. Thank you for joining me. This is Jeran from Jeranism, and it is 7:30 p.m. Pacific Time on the 6th of August, 2018. Thank you for staying with us for that hour-and-a-half interview we had with Andre Polgar. He is the writer of The Age of Anomaly, and he did mention ways that you can get that book for 99 cents. I have the physical copy, and it is a good book. I think it taught me a little bit, mostly about the past and what happened during the .com crash and what happened during the stock market growth and crash. And so, I don't know, there's a lot of good information in there. And he's somebody who has an open mind and not, just operates only under the status quo, which is always impressive to me. So we do have some phone calls coming in. I'll get to those. 1 second, and we'll jump over there. All right, you're on with Jeranism Monday Night Raw. Who's this? Where are you from?
Hey, Jeran, it's Brian in Niagara Falls. How are you?
Hey, good, Brian. Usually your name is on there. I wonder why it doesn't say it this time. Anyway, what's new?
Andre was great. Very interesting to listen to. And, yeah, definitely very good. But my question is for you from my friend Johnny Scuba Dracula.
Johnny boy.
Yes. he would like to know, well, he didn't ask me to ask you, but I'm asking you, do you know when the billboard thing's happening out in Canada for the Edmonton conference?
Now you got me thinking. Is there one? I thought that was for Denver. So I could be wrong here. What do you mean? What do you mean by the billboard?
I was being lazy, Jeran.
Yeah, I'm not, and I'm being lazy.
I thought there was a billboard in Edmonton.
There probably is one.
Well, no,
you're probably right. Hold on one second. Let me.
I just figured.
Whenever I think of that, I'm always thinking that Dave Weiss was in charge of it, and I know he won't be there in Canada, but it doesn't mean that there is not a billboard. So let me see. I just know I'm getting in on Wednesday evening, so I don't think that they're doing anything billboard-like on Wednesday, but I could be wrong. Let me see here. Oh, no, there is a billboard. Okay, I lied. What do I know? It says this is the billboard design that we put up for the Flat Earth International Conference 2018 happening August 9th through 10th. When will it go up, though? I don't see anything about it. I will find out and then somehow put it out there. Maybe I'll find out during the next commercial break. Let me text Robbie and see when this goes up or if we're all meeting there at a certain time or what. But it looks like it was funded.
Oh, that'd be great.
Yeah, it was funded, and so it doesn't say here what date it will be going up. It just says it borders the QE2 highway between Calgary and Edmonton and has nearly 1/4 mile of highway frontage and has upwards of 25,000 vehicles that go by each day with overpasses very close to the south and north sides of this property. So that's all I see. I'll be doing many interviews leading up to the big event. Yeah, I don't see anything about the date that it'll go up. So let me find that out before the last half hour of the show or before the last hour, and I will let everybody know.
Oh yeah, he's out in Red Deer right now. He's done the cross Canada trip, or at least cross Canada if you consider going one way across the continent and going back to the center, being the entire stretch.
I just got a text from David Weiss that the billboard is up in Canada, so it is wherever that
sweet.
And he does, I think he said, that's right, that they're not having any kind of a rally at the billboard.
Oh, well, that's a little disappointing, but I will let him know so he doesn't waste his time. And he is going to meet you guys at the conference. So
awesome. Can't wait to see everybody again.
Because there's no cell towers on the Trans-Canada Highway, so satellite phones and satellite communication just doesn't work. It's like being on the moon.
Yeah, almost exactly. Except for the moon did work. The moon, they could send signals.
Yeah, on TV for sure. But I know, Jeran. Love you, and keep up the good work, my friend.
Thank you so much, sir. I appreciate it.
No worries. We'll talk to you later.
Say hello to the Sugar Bushwhacker crew for me, and let's move on. We got another call. You're on with Jeranism Monday Night Raw. Who's this? Where are you from? Hello, you're on.
I heard you transition. Oh, yeah. Hey, Jeran, it's Travis. Great. That was a fantastic show with Andre. Absolutely great discussion. Thanks for doing it.
Thank you. Yeah, I enjoyed it too. Good book writer. So
I didn't hear anything, so I thought I dropped.
Nope, you're still here. I think everything's good. How are you?
Okay. I'm good. Thanks. Hey, listen. I've got something to tweak your melon, to put a splinter in your brain. Can I send you 2 pictures on Skype real quick, and you can look at them and I can discuss them with you real quick? There's
sure.
2 pictures of the moon. 2 pictures of the moon that I took last week, and
yeah, I've been listening to you on Nathan's show recently.
Oh, okay. Okay, good, great. I appreciate that. Thanks.
Yeah, no, I
let me.
I did kind of. I just want to make sure that you are aware of something, because I wasn't sure if you were aware of it. And I also heard you say something that I didn't think was true, so I wanted to run that by you. You mentioned something about fact that you said something about the stars had rotated a certain amount of distance, but the moon stayed where it was. What did you mean by that?
As far as I can tell, and that's fine if I'm wrong,
mm-hmm.
I was taking pictures, pictures of the moon in California, the moon's position was progressing slowly through the sky. And I noticed that, you know what, maybe, as I'm thinking about it now, it could have been that I was looking at Mars. So Mars would be moving faster than the zodiac.
Okay, well that might be true.
That might be what I was remembering at the time. So now that I'm thinking through that with you.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I was taking pictures. I was taking pictures of Mars as well. And when I went back out 2 hours later, Mars was no longer in view. So that was maybe just something in the back of my subliminal mind, thinking that the entire constellations were moving, but it must have just been simply a wandering star. Anyway.
Are we friends on Skype? I don't know.
I think so.
Okay.
I heard you when you were talking to Andre. There was a Skype tone. And I thought it was mine.
That might be you. Hold on one second. Let me get out of this section and see what we got
here.
here.
They come.
Okay, I see them. Okay. Yeah, both those. Okay, got you. I'm looking at them both.
All right. So as you're looking at them, you'll notice that the termination line is similar. Would you at least think that looking at them?
Let me check here. I'm going to put them in the TFR chat for people if they want to see what we're talking about together. So 1 second. I'm just saving it. Save as desktop. Okay. And would I say that these termination lines are similar? Yeah, they look extremely similar, other than the one at night, or the one with the black background looks a little bit more curved. But I would say they look similar.
Okay. And by similar, I simply mean the angle seems to match. Okay.
Gotcha.
Now the bottom one was 24. Let me say this. It was actually 27 hours earlier. Okay, so the one on the bottom happened the day before, and at 3:00 in the morning. So the top one happened the day after, and at 6:00 in the morning. My question is, why are they so similar? And here's what I'm going to send you right now is, let me send you the next one, because the next one shows you the in-between shot. Here it comes.
Okay, which one did you say? Just remind me, because I missed it. Which one was the earlier one? Which one was the later one?
The darker one happened at 3 in the morning. That's why it's dark.
Okay.
The top one happened at 6 in the morning, which is why there's more of a lighted sky.
Same day. Same day you're talking about?
No.
Okay, how many days
That's
different?
why I said they were 27 hours. They were 27 hours apart.
Got you now. Okay, I was confused.
Okay.
So 27. So 3 a.m.
That's okay.
On like one day, and then 6 a.m. not the following morning, but the one after that. Got you.
Correct. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Now the third one that I just sent you is the same day as the dark background shot.
Okay.
At the same time as the one on top. So the third shot is 6:00 in the morning on Monday in the morning. Okay.
Okay.
So you have two shots at 6:00 in the morning, a day apart, and the termination line is different. So my question is trying to figure that out.
I'm confused on what is wrong with that, because here's the way that I recognize the moon phases is as the moon goes around above my head, it takes 24 hours and 50 minutes, so it falls further and further and further off of the sun track, and as such, during its first, so let's say we're at new moon. Then as it starts to move away from the sun because it is falling further and further behind, it gains basically light on its right side. And then after it's fully lit, which would be 14 days later, then it's at full moon. And then after full moon, as it starts to fall behind still, even though it may look to people like it's catching up to the sun, it's falling behind little bit by little bit every day, getting closer to the sun as it falls behind. Then it's going to gain light. It's going to lose light on its left side. And so the picture that you have that's dark, you said was at 3 a.m., and it has the most amount of moon showing. And then the next day at 6 a.m., you're saying that it has now less light on its left side. And so that's where I'm lost as to that's what I would expect. And then if you went out again another day later, it would have less light. And if you went out another day later, eventually it's going to be just a sliver. And then the day after that, you won't be able to see it. So explain to me what I'm missing here. Okay.
All right. Well, first let me say thank you for entertaining this this fiasco thus far. I appreciate you giving me this much airtime. Okay, let me say it this way, I suppose. The bottom two pictures are the same day. Okay. My issue is not the amount. My issue is not the amount, but rather the rotation of the termination line. Okay, so the middle picture, which is dark, is 3 o'clock in the morning on Monday. The bottom picture below that is 3 hours later on the same day, so you can see the moon is rotating.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
Right, because the moon rotates basically like a wagon wheel.
Right, a wagon wheel. Jinx. Coke, you owe me a Coke.
You owe me a Coke.
Okay, so now go up to the top one. That's a day later. I would expect it to be the same as the bottom one because they're the same time of day, but they're not. It has regressed.
I got you.
If you understand what I mean.
Now I do. Yep. Okay. Let me think about that.
Conundrum.
Yeah, let me think about that off air rather than right now because I'm not going to be able to put my. But now I see what you're saying. Now I totally get it, and now I do want to look at that because you're right. It does seem to have regressed.
Excellent.
Okay. Yeah, sounds great. I appreciate that, and
Excellent.
I love little challenges like that. And I'll update you on Skype.
Good.
What I see.
Fantastic. Thanks, Jeran.
Hey, talk to you soon. Peace. All right. So we got the phone lines are free if anybody wants to call in, or you can just listen to me talk, whichever you want is fine by me. I did mention earlier that there was nobody to my right and nobody to my left. So I was going to talk about that or get into that. If anybody is interested in that, I will kind of talk about that. And that's going to be mostly a talk about honesty or truth. And, with that discussion comes the inevitable discussion about dishonest people or liars. So sadly, I have been bitch slapped. And let me just apologize first and foremost here for the following segment that may be disorganized. It may be me tripping over my words. It may be me getting sentimental or emotional a little bit. I won't cry on the radio, so I will certainly just be quiet. And if you hear quiet, that's probably what's going on. But this is difficult. So, I mean, really, like I said, I've been bitch slapped by truth or by a dishonest person. And it so happened that that particular dishonest person was the one person that I never expected it to be. And so perhaps it's a learning experience for people, because for me it was. And, I spent the last 3 or 4 years pointing out liars, pointing out frauds, and I continue to say that liars have wrecked the world. And in my case, liars have, wrecked the world for sure, and also wrecked my marriage. So I apologize if I sound, like I said, jumpy, or if I'm here and there, because I'm winging this. I have nothing prepared other than, truth, shooting from the heart. And it's probably the hardest thing that I've ever had to speak on, and truly, I just don't know now. I just don't know how to really say it. I'm not going to, like I said, not going to cry on the radio, so forgive me if there is moments where I just shut up, but, you just have to wait it out. It's really taken me this past week to even be able to talk about it, and I think it's important to remain as I have since day one, at least day one on YouTube and day one kind of in the public eye. And that's because I came out and said I thought truth was important. Once I realized that the negatives of the world were all based on lies, and that I thought religion was based on lies, and everywhere I looked, I saw lies. And so I just started to speak out about it, made a channel called Jeranism, which was like meism. If your name is John, you would be Johnism. If your name is Becky, you'd be Beckyism, whatever. And it just meant trusting yourself and not putting faith in other people. And these last 3 or 4 years, I have moved forward and just trying to keep that as my focus, as remaining truthful as I have these last few years. And I figured things will work themselves out because I know that's the right thing to do. And I know that being dishonest or lying is never going to be beneficial, to anyone. It's just going to end up coming back and biting you in the butt. Now, in that journey, I've had Missa with me, and I wouldn't have had it any other way. We met 10 years ago. She was not at first somebody that I would ever have thought I would have married, but that love grew and grew to the point where at that time when I met her, I would have probably bet anybody I would never get married. I was a single father. I became a single father at 20 years old. So I had my son with me 24 hours a day, or, not when I was working, but I mean, I was his sole care provider. And so I just didn't think it was ever going to be at a place where I would meet somebody that would take on my son as well as myself. It was just easier for me to be single. It was just easier to date women and just kind of enjoy them. And that was basically it. When I met Missa, things started to change a little bit, or a lot bit. And she quickly became somebody that was more than a friend. She quickly became somebody who was great with my son. And, I started to see it as a possibility that, she could be more. And really, it was her that changed my mind about marriage, that I thought it was possible, because we had this weird relationship from the beginning that really started with the idea of honesty. And we had both been in tons of relationships before. And we had both been through watching our parents split up. Her mom found out very late in their marriage that her dad had cheated some unknown amount of times. Same thing had happened in my family. My mom had found that my dad had cheated at a very young age for me. I was around 3 years old, and my dad cheated. And they stayed together for the kids. And then when I was about 16 or 17, my mom and dad got divorced, and my dad married a new wife, and my mom married a new husband. And I looked at that, and I kind of could figure why. And first of all, I saw, or I knew, once I found out that my dad had cheated, because I didn't know that for obviously years, and no one told me when you're 12 or something. You don't find that out. But after, when I found out that my dad had cheated at such a young age for me, I could see then that my parents never really had that true love. Something I noticed, but I guess never really verbalized or never really said, because it was just something that I thought that was their marriage. Their marriage was what it was. That's what I saw. But there was really no love there, as it was just kind of like an arrangement. My dad went to work. My mom stayed home. My dad get home from work. He'd sit on the couch, and my mom would come by and bitch about him not doing the dishes or bitch about something. And it was like a nag. And I saw that. And I saw that my dad worked hard. Not saying that I saw that he was great to her. I didn't see that. I saw that he was very matter of fact, go to work, but he did get up at like 6 a.m. every day and not get home till 6 or 7. And he would hit the couch, as I think anybody would, and just kick back, take his shoes off. And there was my mom saying something about not helping with dinner or not setting the table or whatever. And so I just saw this nagging relationship. So when I found out that it had ended, obviously it wasn't a surprise to me. And so I just kind of, we all shape ourselves around what we see, right? And so I just knew that if I ever were to be in a relationship, I would want it to be much different. And so when Missa came along and had basically the same story, as we started talking more and more about the possibility of maybe her even moving in, one of the things that was so important to me was the idea of truthfulness in a relationship, and that every relationship that I had ever been in had ended because somebody had lied, somebody had been dishonest. And I said, isn't it easier that we're just honest? That if your girlfriend goes out with her friends, hey, I want to go out dancing with my friends, do you mind? And you say, yeah, go ahead. And she goes out, and while she's out dancing, there's a guy there. And he asks her to dance, and they start dancing together, and they dance there for 2, 3 songs, 4 songs, whatever. And they're getting along great. But she knows she's got you to go back to, and she doesn't want anything to do with this guy. So she comes home, and you say, how was the night? How did it go? And she says, it was great. We just danced. And you ask her, did you dance with any guys? And she says, nope, just with my friends. And she's saying that to basically protect you, right? She just doesn't want the baggage that goes with saying, well, yeah, I did dance with this one particular guy. Yeah, I did dance with him 4 times. But in my opinion, there was truth there that should have been told. And if you were in a mutually agreeable relationship to where you understood each other, then hopefully that would be okay with the guy if she got home and said, oh, yeah, I danced. And, did you dance with any guy? Yeah, there was this guy there. He was pretty cool. Danced with him 4 or 5 songs. But that honesty is what could hold a relationship together. Because what happens is if you come home and tell that lie, nope, didn't dance with any guy, okay. And then 3 or 4 days later, you're at work, and a buddy comes by and says, oh, I saw your wife the other night at the bar dancing with this guy. Oh, really? A guy? What do you mean, like quick? They were dancing real quick? No. They danced. I think I saw him, 3, 4 songs. So all of a sudden now you've got this predicament where she actually does love you. She actually does care, but she's come across as a liar. You're going to have that distrust in her. You're going to have that distrust in her friends. You're going to have that distrust in her going out when you're not there. And all of a sudden, this relationship is crap. And it's because of dishonesty. It's because of not trusting each other. And so Miss and I wanted to have a relationship that was different. And that was how we initiated things. We said, let's be honest. Let's be truthful about everything we do. And so we were. And at least that's the way that we have been, in the fact that if I find a girl attractive, I'll tell her. If we're just very open. And I think that it allowed us to have a different kind of relationship. We both saw and made fun of or talked about or at least explored all the other relationships that we saw, and from our parents to our friends, everything. And it was very easy to usually recognize the error in the process. Where did things go wrong? Where did it start to not work out? And so the problem becomes, fast forward many, many, many years, 7 years from the date of our marriage, fast forward to this past Monday, and imagine the slap across the face, the hammer throw, the anvil drop for me to find out that my wife, who I had every faith in the world in, who meant the world to me, I found out that she has been having a extramarital sexual encounter with my best friend. Imagine my shock that, I spend every day pointing out liars, frauds, Richard Branson, George Whitesides, NASA, President Bush. And yet, sleeping in my very bed was someone lying to my face. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. More with Jeranism Monday night, and it doesn't get any rawer than this.
Censorship and regulation is becoming an ever-growing problem in today's modern media. From the mainstream to YouTube and Google, the information you're looking for is buried by official narratives and propaganda. This is why TFR is 100% uncensored, unregulated, and listener-supported. The shows on TFR are not micromanaged by the station, and our hosts are free to speak their minds however they please. As such, the views and opinions expressed on our station are of those who make them. If you happen to hear anything offensive on TFR, please send us an email to toughtitty@tfrlive.com, and we'll be happy to tell you that we really don't give a damn. We stand for freedom of speech and non-censorship. If you also stand for free speech, you can go to tfrlive.com/signup and sign up for a TFR supporter pass and help us in our mission to keep the airwaves uncensored and unregulated. TFR Live, your uncensored and unregulated protection from deception.
The Manafort trial, the Russia probe. I'm Ann Cates. The one-time partner of former Trump campaign manager Paul Manafort has been on the witness stand at his bank and tax fraud trial.
In a matter-of-fact voice, Rick Gates testified that he and Manafort committed crimes together. Gates, who is the prosecution's star witness and has pleaded guilty to 2 felonies, testified that at Manafort's direction, he didn't report the company's control over multiple foreign bank accounts in Cyprus, the Grenadines, and the United Kingdom. He also testified that he helped Manafort falsify tax returns. And Gates admitted taking what he described as several $100,000 from Manafort that wasn't authorized. Jerry Bodlander at the federal courthouse, Alexandria, Virginia.
Gates will return to the courtroom near Washington, D.C. tomorrow morning to continue testifying. President Trump is being urged to stop tweeting about a meeting his son had with Russians after he said it was to get dirt on Hillary Clinton. Correspondent Jeff Zeleny.
It shows how brazenly misleading the original explanation of the meeting was, when Donald Trump Jr. first said, "We primarily discussed a program about the adoption of Russian children." While the president has since defended the meeting, on ABC's This Week, the president's lawyer, Jay Sekulow, said he made a mistake last year, initially describing it.
I had bad information at that time. I made a mistake in my statement. I've talked about that before. That happens when you have cases like this.
The Trump administration is reimposing sanctions on Iran. National Security Advisor John Bolton.
There's no doubt, and there shouldn't be any doubt in anybody's mind, particularly in Tehran, that we're going to put all the sanctions back in as they were before and more, to put really the maximum pressure that we can on the government of Iran, unprecedented pressure, and we're prepared to carry through on that.
On Wall Street, the Dow Jones Industrial Average rose 40 points, the S&P 500 gained 10, the Nasdaq closed up 48. I'm Ann Cates.
Wherever you are, make it TFR. Truth Frequency Radio.
Welcome back. You're listening to Jeranism Monday Night Raw, and it will surely get pretty raw from here, I'm guessing. If you do call in, I'm not going to take calls during this next half hour as I mow through this story. But after that, if you do have a call, if you want to call in question or whatever, you can do that. And that phone number will be 213-233-3998. But for the next half hour, I will not be taking calls. So just to kind of get it out, I think it's good to talk about. Sometimes when we hold things in, that certainly isn't good. And so I think it's better that I kind of talk it out and kind of go from there and grow from there. So as far as I know, and to the best of my knowledge, Missa will not be back on the show. And that is, my choice more than at this point hers. Obviously, we'll talk a little bit about that going forward. But the problem, or maybe not the problem, but the point of our relationship that was so good, in my opinion, was this unwritten rule of honesty. Many people might have cell phones like an iPhone, and if you're married, ask yourself the question now of whether or not you lock your phone. Now, many people, I'm sure, do, because it is best to have that. If you were ever pulled over by the police or somebody found it, you want to have that lock so that they can't get to your important information. As a married couple, at the same time, it's nice to know that you have access to their cell phone. And that's something that Missa and I had, in the fact that we knew each other's code, obviously. So anybody could get into the other person's phone if they ever wanted to. But also with this unwritten rule of honesty, there was no reason for me to ever check her phone. And no reason, I'm assuming, for her to ever check mine. Again, if she had in the past, I wouldn't know. I'm sure she didn't just tell me, by the way, I just looked through your phone. But that was the great thing to me about our relationship, is that when you're open and honest, there is no need for worry. There is no reason to be jealous. There just isn't, because you don't have those lingering doubts. And when you're constantly checking up on somebody, I think that gets in the way of love. And when I look back at that relationship that I grew up with, watching my mom and dad, it didn't seem like there was love there. And when I found out that my dad had cheated when I was 3, I realized why. And that's because once somebody has ventured into the land of the liars, once somebody has removed themselves from your trust circle, if you will, it becomes very difficult to have that same kind of relationship with that person, because there's always doubt. And the great thing about my marriage with Missa is there was never that doubt. And it allowed us to be very comfortable in our own skin. We enjoyed each other a lot. We had a lot of fun. And we were always, at least I was, always aware that at any point she could say something wasn't making her happy or something was, and I would be ready to fix that issue, whatever it might be. But in absence of that report, then there was no way for me to ever know that there was an issue or that there was a potential issue. And so what that might do, and this is for the married people out there, is it might create a complacency where you just become part of this rut, to where, and I call it a rut now, but I mean, I was happy. So there was nothing that needed fixing, in my opinion. There was nothing. For instance, many people have heard us talk about the fact that we don't go to movies. And I've gotten so many emails or text messages, or even somebody sent us a Fandango a gift card and said, go to a movie. You need to go to a movie. And Missa and I both have talked many times that we don't enjoy going to the movies. It's incredibly expensive. It is somebody basically lying to you on screen. It always sets up some sort of future, basically like a preconditioning. And it's just something that we never enjoyed doing, and so we don't do it. Now, if, come down the road, she said something like, I miss going to movies, then that'd be something that I would do. I would go back to the movies, basically saying that I would do anything to keep the relationship or keep my wife happy. That was a vow I made 7 years ago, November the 11th, 2011. And it was a vow I meant, that, I promised to cherish and to be faithful to and respectful to and love my wife till the end of time. And I meant it. That was my my vows we wrote our own vows. And so it was something that I never questioned. And it was certainly something that I knew going into was a compromise, that any marriage is the coming together of two people because they feel they're stronger as one. And as a single dad, I felt I was stronger as a parent with two. As a person who had many, many relationships, I know a lot of people don't know about my past or anything, but, all throughout high school and the years after, and even when I was a single father, I was always in little, call them relationships, call them little, I wouldn't say they were very often like one night stands, but they were little flings, little, whatever. And this sounded so good to me once I had found the person that I felt I could spend forever with, that it was so important to me that I was like shocking, that I never thought I would find that person. And when I did, it was special in a way that I had never felt before. And so I still can remember the very first time that I told Miss I loved her. I remember exactly where we were. We were in a hotel bed in Reno, Nevada. And that was important to me that I actually went back there. That's where we went back when we got engaged. And all those things were little milestones in our relationship of me finding somebody that meant the world to me, that ultimately I knew would always have my back. Certainly things that she said, like that she'd always have my back. And so I became very trusting of this person. And like I always say, don't trust men. And in that, I mean women as well. But, once a person, and I've always said this too, once a person has solidified themselves, or at least, graduated up the scale to somebody that has never lied to you, that, or very rarely. And when I've told people before, even my wife has lied to me, they were tiny little things that were not really lies so much as they may have been omissions of whatever. But what I'm getting at is that it was very difficult to see or foresee that there would ever be an issue, because I always expected this open conversation between us two. And what I've found out in this past week is that there was something missing, I guess, from what was going on, and that was, as she describes it, the newness or the excitement of somebody flirting with her. And just so people know where we currently stand, Missa is going through a period right now where she's apologizing and in every way saying how sorry she is and that she wants to start over and go back to the beginning, and that she is sorry for her mistake and it was a mistake and she's not interested in my friend anymore, or never was interested in him, but it was just something that, because I think, and just so I can finish that thought, and I'm somebody who can't look at her the same way again. And so she's staying at the house now, and she'll be leaving as soon as I get back from Canada. And that will be it as far as I can see it, because I can't look at that person the same anymore. It's not the same. For me, it is a complete destruction of trust. It is a complete destruction of the vows of the marriage. This is how many people have stood up in front of my family and friends and promised to be faithful to me. Well, I'll give you that answer. The answer is one. And how many people have taken that vow and destroyed it? And the answer is one. So, and I don't want to feel like the bad guy, and that's what this last week has felt like, as one person's telling you you're sorry, and you're basically, it's now at the point where, like, I'm breaking up with her, which is not the case at all, but may come across that way, or because obviously she's trying to keep the relationship going, and I can't see that happening. And possibly we need time, or possibly I need time, and we'll see what the future holds. But for me, it's a complete trashing of everything that I thought marriage was. And what I fear is the same thing I saw from my parents. If I were to say, okay, I accept your apology, I understand you made mistakes, whatever. and let's go forward. Well, I would always have that skeptical eye. I would always not, at least as I can guess. I mean, I don't know what the future would be like, but I'm just saying based on how I think I would feel, I would never have that full trust again. And therefore, I think the marriage would end up like my parents did, where basically I just saw my mom never really fully love my dad. It just seemed like a scowl on her face all the time. Well, I could see or foresee our marriage being the same. And then what ended up happening in my parents' marriage? Well, not more than 13 years later, 14 years later, my dad basically cheated again. And it could be because, well, he wasn't getting what he needed because it just was not there from my mom again. And I don't blame her. I look at it and I say that it's possible that my mom just couldn't love him the same anymore. That's my guess. And so it comes down to the question of if the trust isn't there, could the love be there? And maybe that's something that could be worked out over a long period of time. But certainly on anything on the short end, I can't see that. I can't imagine it taking place. I can't imagine me feeling the same. So that's right now, that's where, things kind of stand. Because if that's my own problem, personal problem, then, we can call it that if we want. But the hardest part of the whole thing is I would like to just point out, you went against the marriage vows and I didn't. But then again, my marriage vows say I promise to love you and be faithful to you till death do us part. The vows did not say I promise to be faithful to you until you are not faithful to me. So that's probably the most difficult thing. Is I wish it was just as simple as, well, I kept my vows and you didn't. But, well, really, if I'm, then I didn't keep the vows, really, did I? So that's kind of a difficult part. But on the other hand, I think that should be written into vows if it's not already. If you ever write your own vows, probably put that in there, because I'd feel a lot better if my vows had said that. But they did not. They just said what I promised, and then she read what she promised, and that was it. And so unfortunately, there was no mention of, and if this person can't uphold their end of the bargain, then I no longer wish to uphold mine. But things have changed, and that's where I think that it needs to be put into the vows, because when you're making those vows, you're making them under several assumptions. And one of those assumptions for me was that I'm making these vows because you're making yours. I'm not making these vows to myself or to a person that has not promised to do the same. The fact that I'm making the vows is because you are too. And as a unit, we will operate under these foundational assumptions, being that I'm saying this because you're saying this. And so when somebody steps out of line, then I don't have a problem with, or at least I don't foresee a problem with me breaking my vows. It wasn't intended that. It wasn't intended to be that way. It's not the way that I envisioned my marriage. If you would have asked me last Sunday afternoon, where I'd be and who I'd be with when I was 95 years old, I would say I'd have no idea where I'd be, but I know that Missa would be right by my side. So to have that change in a day is probably the hardest thing that I've ever had to deal with, because it's unexpected. It's was never a thought in my mind, because as I've said, I would have done anything to protect it. Meaning, one of the funny things that's happened this, last week is I was saying to Missa that, if whatever it was, if I was too tall or I was too short or too fat or too skinny, I would have done everything I could to change it. Even I would have gone to counseling. And, and then she said, oh, okay, can we go to counseling then? Can we go to counseling? It's like, no, not now. I didn't mean now. That's not what I meant. I meant that no matter what was missing, no matter what wasn't being done by this person or that person, that I would have taken steps to make sure that we changed it. And if it was too much change, let's say that she said, Jeran, I'm tired of you doing your radio show and having a YouTube channel, then, I would take the steps that I needed to do to stop that. And if it got to a point where I need that, I can't live without it, then I would have gone back and said, can we work out a compromise? But that's what I mean by it's like I would have worked on it, whatever it was. When you're not informed of what you need to work on, then it becomes a problem. Because one thing I've told Missa from day one, and she's always known about me, is I'm not a mind reader. Women out there, if your men ever tell you that they are thinking about nothing, they are honestly, truthfully thinking about nothing. And as hard as that is for you to comprehend, just like us not imagining what's going on in your head, I don't even want to begin to speculate. But you have to recognize this difference between men and women, that I can sit there and literally stare at the wall and think of nothing. It's just something we have the unique ability of doing. And also, we miss the most obvious of signs. So, if you're one of those people, when you say, is anything wrong? And they say, no, everything's fine. To us, that means everything's fine, because we just asked you and you just told us everything's fine. So if in some sort of a mysterious female, roundabout way, that's supposed to get us to ask more questions or to pay more attention, whatever it is, just know that you are doing it the wrong way. That will never amount to anything. And I'm speaking right now on behalf of all guys, because I don't think any guy out there listening would disagree with me that you need to be very upfront. You need to be very clear. And we are simple people that will tell you whether or not what you've asked is within our range of possibilities. If you're asking for something that we don't think we can provide, we're going to tell you. And if you are asking for something easy, we'll tell you. But when you don't tell us and think we'll figure it out, you've got very little chance of that actually happening, unless by accident we do it. And that's just the truth, and that's just the way it goes. We just don't have that ability to possibly pay attention to your demeanor or whatever. It's just we need it to be more simple than that. And if you don't like that, then you should probably look into becoming a lesbian or something. Because if you like men and like I like women, then you have to accept certain things about them that is not perfect by any stretch. And no man has ever said that every woman is perfect, and no woman has ever said that every man is perfect. But I feel like at times, that there may be more expected of us than is possible. So in this particular instance, or in this particular case, if I would have been told, hey, I miss the flirtiness that we used to have. Hey, remember the things that you said when we first were getting together? I don't see those things anymore from you. Then I would have made steps to correct that. But you have to remember that we have our own opinion, and sometimes we think that others think like us. And for me, I don't need to be really told anymore from my wife that I'm attractive, or that she's attracted to me, or I don't need to hear those flirtatious things. Now, thinking about it, if you have some person that's constantly flirting with you or something like that, well, maybe that becomes something that you're like, man, I miss this. I really like that. I really like this. And maybe it's just a case of I didn't have that so much and she did, or whatever. But if I would have known that that was important, and so my advice to all married couples would be, no matter what, I would say keep it fresh, keep it exciting, keep it new, keep it spontaneous, flirt at every possible moment. Even if you feel like, well, we've been married 7 years, it's no longer important to me. Well, maybe it still is important to her. And if that's how you won her over, if that's how you got her to love you, well, then you probably should continue that, despite what she says, despite what you see, because I didn't see anything. And so, kind of what I was talking about with going to the movies and things, I was always under the assumption, okay, just like movies aren't important to me, movies aren't important to her. And so you start to feel like you are this team to where you have the same thoughts and understandings. And so for me, we've been married 7 years, that certain things like flirting and stuff like that was no longer important to me. She'd never mentioned it, so I would assume that it's not important to her. And you know what happens when you make assumptions, as they say, you make an ass out of you and me. So that seems to be the particular case here. I am pretty lucky that I figured it out. And it was the weirdest way that that one could, simply because I had no idea. And I guess I wasn't paying attention enough in the fact that pretty much there was nothing else that could have possibly been going on. Meaning we both live together in Merced. We are nowhere near people we know. Well, not nowhere near. I mean, we're 2-3 hours away. And she's with me all the time. So pretty much I never even ventured a guess or thought that anything could be going on. Then I look back now, and after you find things out, you're like, oh, okay, makes sense. There was 2 or 3 times where she went to the town that we used to live in to be fitted for a dress or for some reason or another. And when you look back, you kind of say, oh, okay, that the one time that she went anywhere, I should have guessed it, and I didn't. And so, I don't know where we should go from here. I really don't. But I'm going to continue forward, and I'm going to not change anything about myself, other than if I ever do have a future relationship, then I will put more into making sure that whatever I did to make that relationship a thing, or whatever I did to win the heart or win the affection of whoever this future girl may be, that I will make sure I don't ever let those things fade away. And that would be my only true learning experience from this. I would hope that the same rules would apply, like that, being honest, trustworthy, trusting, and I think that I want to give people that opportunity to earn my trust. And the people that have taken that and trashed it, mainly Missa and my best friend, good luck on earning it back. I don't think it's possible. I can't imagine it being possible. So that's just, where I stand right now. And again, I want to talk about it for my own sanity, but also as a learning experience for others. So, all you men or all you women out there listening, if you've been in any relationship for any certain amount of time, and now you think back to when you got in that relationship and you remember things being different, just recognize that. Just recognize that there's a chance that whatever person you used to treat a different way, or however you used to talk to them or flirt with them, or maybe you brought home flowers for her, or maybe you took her out every Saturday, even though you might think that those days have passed and they're not important anymore, well, you don't want to wake up to what I did a week ago. You don't want to find out that little did you know that person would have appreciated more of that, and potentially it could have protected the marriage, or maybe so that these oncoming advances of somebody else were seen as futile, which is what I would expect. Anyway, don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. You're listening to Jeranism Monday Night Raw as it gets.
Hey everyone, it's Chris Gio, founder of Truth Frequency Radio and host of Beyond the Veil. The mainstream media and establishment are running scared right now, and they've prominently featured TruthFrequencyRadio.com as number 89 on the federal government's hit list, also known as the fake news list, which is essentially a list of sites slated for censorship on Facebook, YouTube, Google, and other social media. Now is the time for you to get involved. Share your favorite TFR shows far and wide on forums and social media. Tell your friends and family about your favorite shows. If you're a business owner, get in touch with us to feature your product or service right here on TFR. And if you haven't done so already, become a TFR supporter now and get unlimited commercial-free downloads in high quality. Visit truthfrequencyradio.com/sign-up. Thank you for making TFR the leader in independent and uncensored talk radio. Truth Frequency Radio, your protection from deception.
So, you love talk radio? Then you'll love TalkStreamLive.com. TalkStream Live is always on, 24/7 with the best streaming talk shows. Find your favorite talkers and discover some new ones. It's free, readily available online or on mobile with any smartphone or tablet. Finding your favorite talk shows all in one place has gotten a whole lot easier. Just go to TalkStreamLive.com. Be sure to download the free apps from Google Play or the iTunes App Store.
If you have hard water, the lime scale not only leaves white spots, it clogs pipes and breaks down appliances, costing you hundreds of dollars in energy and wear. Eliminate lime scale and other water issues like brown staining and bad odors with HydroCare water products, available from Wave Home Solutions. Wave's affordable water systems don't use salts or chemicals. You'll love the way your water tastes, smells, and looks. Satisfaction guaranteed. For more information, go to bestwater123.com. That's bestwater123.com.
This is Phoenix of Phoenix Rising Radio. If you are interested in the law of attraction, then I recommend to you my book, The 3 Keys to Heaven, How to Unlock Your Power Within. The 3 Keys to Heaven is a guide to effectual manifestation. What you will learn from the study of this book is not theory, but is proven fact. You will learn effective techniques that will enhance your faith and your ability to powerfully manifest your heart's desires, whatever they may be. Once learned, this method of manifestation will forever change your life. So go to Amazon.com and search for The 3 Keys to Heaven, How to Unlock Your Power Within.
No hate, no hype, no fear. We are TFR. Your protection from deception.
Welcome back. You're listening to Jeranism Monday Night Raw. Thank you for joining me. I just was glancing down at the chat room there, and I saw somebody says, Jeran, we need to apply the same standards that you applied to others until you provide proof that you didn't cheat on her and you provide proof that she cheated on you. Why should we believe you? You have taught us that we should not trust men, so where is your proof? And in that, of course, I have proof, and I don't think that, I don't know how you can prove that I didn't cheat on her. I'm just telling you my side of the story, and if Miss ever wants to tell you hers, it will be the same. In fact, one of the things that I did do was had her sign a statement of exactly what happened, and that she would not ask me for anything in the future. As far as what usually happens when a married couple gets divorced and there's money talk and there's discussions of that nature, I thought it was important that she admitted to what she did and understood why I don't think that she should ever ask of anything from me. Because, again, there's assumptions made going into the relationship, and those assumptions were not met. And so, if you need proof, well, then you can get it eventually, I'm sure. And I'm sure Missa will one day speak out about it, and she will say exactly what I'm telling you, that, it basically was as simple as my friend, who was basically the only one that was ever around us, obviously realized at some point that he could make little flirtatious advances towards her, and that she kind of liked it in whatever way. And when you add to that then some text messages, some little flirty text messages, and if she's not getting those from me, because I certainly don't very often send her a little flirty text message, eventually that led to a meetup. And it wasn't very many times. It wasn't, again, she's always here. And it's unfortunate that, the few times that she wasn't was her basically taking advantage of this radio show or Globebusters, knowing that I would be a certain place at a certain time for a certain amount of period or a certain period of time, allowed her to get away with some things that maybe otherwise would have been questioned. And again, like I said, there was just too much trust there. I never thought to question it. So just as a rundown of how I came across this and kind of how lucky I got, well, I happened to be passing by the bed and her phone was sitting there, and I picked it up and saw that it was cracked, something that I did not know. Didn't know that her phone was ever cracked. It's mostly not cracked. But in this particular case, it was cracked, and I just thought, oh, this is interesting. And opened it up, and there was a text message from my friend asking her what's going on with Sunday night, something like that. And to me, the first thing I'm thinking is, what does he talk? Why was he asking her what's going on Sunday night? So I'm thinking, what happened Sunday night? And the previous Sunday night was the night that she was supposed to get back from the wedding, her sister's wedding, which she ended up getting home Monday afternoon about 3 p.m. And so I just was thinking about this text message, thinking Sunday night, and was like, that's weird that, originally she was supposed to get back Sunday night. I knew that. Her brother had to work on Monday morning, and then they didn't get back Monday night. They got back Sunday night. They got back Monday afternoon. So I just was thinking, why would he ask her what's going on with Sunday night? So it just didn't make sense to me, but I'm thinking in my head and everything starts rolling through. And then I kind of start thinking like, well, there is only one person that if ever she was to have, I don't know, meetups with or have another conversation with, it's going to be my friend. So I just started to think in my head, like, is there any chance that this could be something going on? And I'd actually asked before, like, months before, I said something to the effect of, there's nothing going on between you and my buddy, is there? Oh. And she said, no, she laughed at me, actually, is what happened. Laughed and said, no, what, are you kidding me? And, it made me feel stupid for even asking that question. And so I didn't think there was any chance or whatever, but I look at this phone and I get this message. So I just said, you know what? I'm just going to take a chance. I knew that she was out in the garage at the time. And I said, I'm just going to take the chance of asking the question. Just going to ask if there's any chance that, I kind of was going to make it sound like I knew. And that's basically, the way I was going to do it, is just to say, hey, do you want to tell me about what's going on? Because I already know. And kind of take it that route. And so I did, and of course the first response was, no, what are you talking about? You're crazy? And then I asked again, well, no. And I said, no, my buddy, I've already talked to my buddy. I already know, so you can either continue to lie to my face or you can be honest. And she said, no, don't know what you're talking about. You're crazy. And I said, okay, that's fine if you choose that technique, if you just want to lie to me, because I already know. And then came the head drop. And at that point came the heartbreak, where I realized I was onto something, at least something that I thought was never a possibility was now obviously a major possibility. And from that, I just kind of let her tell me what she wanted from that point. And she said that there was a few times that this had taken place. And, from that point, my life was changed. It's one of those times where you wake up every morning from that point forward and you hope you're dreaming. And you can't really figure out why or, how or what went wrong, what could you have done differently. And really, the more I, thought about it, the more I weighed on it, the more I considered it, there's not anything I really could have done. And that's, if you're not told what the issues are, if there is issues or whatever, then how can you, look at yourself and say, I could have done this differently, or I should have done this differently. It's kind of hard to say that. And I'm not going to put that on myself. I would hope that she would look at it and say, what could she have done differently, and come up with many things. One of those being, as soon as she felt something wasn't right, that she was missing something, something wasn't there, these flirts were making her enjoy that, or making her in some way miss that, or whatever it might be, that she should have brought it up immediately. Because the more that she held it in, the more that it you allow that to fester. Well, obviously that didn't do any good, because it eventually led to much more. And this is difficult for me because I've, at least that I can think of, never been cheated on. And so it was new to me, that the feeling was weird to me. Because at first you're thinking, and this is my true opinion, I really wish that she loved him. I really wish he loved her. I wish that she didn't like me. And I wish that she didn't want to be with me anymore, because that would make it easier. To be honest, that would make it make sense to me. That would make the healing process quicker and easier. And like I said, the whole thing would make more sense, because what you ultimately are looking at there is, okay, this person doesn't want to be with me. Probably not going to be able to repair that. She's found somebody else who loves her. She loves him. And hopefully, from that, it would just be easy to kind of come to grips with. I would have to get over the heartbreak. I would have to get over the, what she did to me. But on the other hand, and I'll state this emphatically, that I wish her every happiness and success going forward. I truly hope she finds somebody that will make her happy in every way that she wants. There's no reason for me to have any hate in the situation. Now, that being said, I've also, informed my friend that I certainly do not issue any threats or say anything threatening to anyone, but it would be in his best interest to not run into me. And that's not a threat as much as it is just a kind of knowledge of myself. And, so it's not a threat. It's just simply a statement of fact that it would be in his best interest to not cross paths. But as far as she goes, I certainly don't have ill feelings to the point where, I hope you die. I hope you get in a car crash, or, any kind of hate like that. I just don't think those things are beneficial to anyone. I wish her the best of success. It would only make me sadder if those things didn't happen. So for me, that's where I wish that there was like a love there, or something that would allow the separation to be easy. When you don't have that, when you've got instead somebody who seems to be apologizing, somebody who seems to be genuinely sorry, somebody who seems to recognize their error and has a desire to fix it, that makes it much more difficult. Because while that may be the case, there were so many ways to go about that, and the one way that it was taken care of, or the one way it was handled, is the one way that can't be forgiven. So, and that may be me, maybe other people have similar stories. I'm not really sure. For me, it's just, that's the one thing. She could have said anything to me. Hey, I'm absolutely attracted to your best friend, which she, by the way, says that she's not. Who knows? But, I'm so attracted to him, and I'm so attracted to the way that he flirts with me, and it's really making me want to go over there and have some fun. And I just wanted to tell you before I did, to see if there's anything you have to say about it. And you can bet your bottom dollar I would have done everything I could to prevent that. Now, when those things are handled without your knowledge, well, there's nothing you can do to prevent it. So that's the thing that sucks. And it doesn't matter what was said. I would have tried to repair it. And if it was about counseling, or it was about some other method or whatever needed to be done, because you look at it and you say, well, was the sex better? And the answer is no, not at all. It wasn't even good. It was quick. It was just nothing like ours. Okay, so then you got that out of the way. Okay, well, was he's not more attractive to me? No, I'm not attracted to him. Okay, well, so you get to this point where there's really nothing. It just comes down to a stupid decision. It comes down to keeping something hidden inside this, whatever it is, desire to be flirted with, or this idea of something exciting, or this idea of something new, and letting it fester until it gets, to a point where it boils over. I don't know. Here's my ultimate kind of statement on that, and this is what it comes down to me. I would have never did it to her. Period. Doesn't matter what else. Doesn't matter what you bring into it, what other elements are added. I would have never done it to her. I would have always brought something to her attention. I would have always tried to let her fix whatever the issue may be. And if ultimately that couldn't be fixed, well, then at least there's a reason for what's happened. Meaning that, usually if somebody cheats, it's because, okay, well, you weren't attracted to me anymore, and I used to put on this negligee and come into your office every other day, and you would never want anything to do with me, and it didn't excite you. And, then you look at it, and then your wife goes and cheats, and the husband looks at it and says, well, I had all those opportunities. I let her come in here with her negligee, and I didn't give her any of my attention. And that's not the case, in this particular situation. So you kind of run to the end of the road with no fork there. And you get there and you're like, well, what could I have done? There was no signs. There was no, flares. There was no warning signs along the way, because really what it comes down to is the idea of honesty. And so that's all I want to get across to people is, the importance, the absolute dire importance of honesty in every aspect. So please be honest with your significant other, your spouse, your girlfriend, your boyfriend. If you're not happy, if you're not getting something that you feel is important, that it's important to you, then it needs to be important enough for you to speak to them about it. And if you're not, and you're doing it for the health of the relationship, well, it's going to come back and bite you. So while you might be keeping something in because speaking out about it would cause a rift, would cause a ruffle, well, you're just, in my opinion, prolonging the inevitable. If it wasn't with my friend, then I'm assuming it would have been somebody else at some point. that would have seized the opportunity. Because, I mean, and the thing about Miss and I that I thought that she understood, we talked about understanding it, was this idea of open and honesty, because this is the cure all. It is the end, it cures all ills, honesty, because then there can never be an instance where somebody is left in the dark. And for me, man, the hardest thing, I don't know how else to put it, but Miss and I were a team, and a team sticks together, and a team has each other's back, and a team, is stronger as two than they are as one. And to find out that I've basically been on a fake team for several months is really gut-wrenching. And I think about videos that I made, and I think about shows that we've had where I've sat here and said my feelings on truth and honesty, and she's been right here next to me and echoed my every statement and said the same things. And to find out that that person is a snake in the grass, and that person is lying to your face daily. This is not something that's a mistake. This is not something where it happened one time because she was drunk. This is repeated times with intent, in a callous nature, with deception, with planning, with various text messages at certain times to keep the story up. This is deliberate. And those things are all slaps across the face. So I'm just going to check if we have any calls before the show's over. I think we have one call. You're on with Jeranism RAW. What's up?
Jeran, it's Brian again, Niagara Falls.
What's up?
I'm just sorry to hear this story. It's not a story, it's real life. So I apologize for saying story. But if you ever want to vent off air, do you have a pen handy?
I do.
905-380-1177. Call that number anytime you want. Yeah, that's my number.
Right, I got it down. You just gave it
905.
No, don't read it again. I have it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, but we're into the third hour, and TFR gives you 1 hour, and within a week, nobody's going to hear this until the replay. But honestly, if you want to vent, I've got a vault like you wouldn't believe. I just, if you need somebody to talk to that's not going to come around and just bash on you, I got your back, man. And yeah, that's
right,
my phone number. And anytime you need to call, or if you want to call, you're welcome to. And
all right, man, I really appreciate that. Thank you. I mean, everyone's been awesome so far. Obviously, what's my fear in the whole situation? Well, that people out there that already hate me for whatever God knows reason, I'm not afraid of the truth. I'm afraid what people will do with the truth to try and hurt me more. And that's about it. I mean, other than that, but I really don't care. You cannot hurt me worse than I've been hurt this week. I will have you know that in every possible way. So you can go ahead and try, and you will fail, because I'm going to remain resilient, and I'm going to move forward and do what I can to get back on my feet. And it may take me a while, but starting off with this week, I'm going to go off to Canada, and I'm going to present my presentation and start the path of repair. So, and as far as I know, I believe Missa has rented a car and is going to be headed off to her family in Montana come my return from So need somebody to watch the dog while I'm gone and watch the house. And then when I get back, we'll be going our separate ways. And again, that's not her desire, but is mine. And I don't think that's going to change. I know that's not going to change. And like I said, maybe it's time will repair things. I don't think they will. But I wanted to thank everybody out there who's been a supporter of ours. Really, thank you so much. You've made, at least in my opinion, my life and our life better. Thank everybody for their help when we struggled to find a place. We were living in a little shack that had mice, and it was gross, and it was broken down, and it was just disgusting. It was not a healthy place to be in any way, shape, or form. And I'm sure you guys remember the story as we got out of there and then had nowhere to go, and found out 5 days before we had to be out that the place that we had secured was actually not going to be secured due to the people staying there. And it just created some real heartache. And because of everybody out there and the support that we get, we were able to find a place last minute that really was like as lucky as anybody could ever be. And we came to this new place, and I was completely happy. It's quiet, it's relaxed, it's clean, it's a place to that you can be healthy, that you can really start to grow. So I was happy, and I think that she would say she was happy, other than that one little thing. So I just want to thank everybody so much. But going forward, it will be just me. The show will continue. I will continue. The channel will continue. But you will not hear me in the intro mention anybody to my right or left, because there will be nobody here. And so you will just have to either enjoy the show with just me, or not enjoy the show and maybe possibly wait for Missa to come out with her own show or something. I don't know. That's on her. But going forward, it's going to be me, and I'm going to continue on in trying to change the world, one issue at a time, one day at a time. And like I said, my only advice to couples out there, if you think everything's good, be careful. Don't get too comfortable, because that may be my one mistake, is getting too comfortable and not recognizing the possibility that something might not be right, because I just assumed that person would tell me. That was the whole point. So, then again, I would also say that be honest in your relationship. If you and your husband have got together and you've decided that you will always tell each other when something's the matter, then I don't fault you for doing what I did, which is believing that everything was okay because nothing was said. So my advice to you would be to be honest. If that's your agreement together, hey, we'll always be honest. We'll never let something bother us. Hey, whenever you're feeling a certain way, tell me. If you don't like the way I'm doing something, tell me. If we're not having sex enough, tell me. If we're having too much sex, tell me. Whatever it is. If that's your agreement together, then you really need to stick to that. Or else you'll become just another victim like me, to where you are blindsided, absolutely floored, and just there was more found out after that initial conversation where I because remember I'd said what's going on with Sunday night, the text message. Well, that part didn't come out in the revelation, and I knew that, and so I let that kind of fester till the next day, and then gave several opportunities for that particular part of the story to come out, and it didn't, even after I asked, like, so what happened with Sunday night? Nothing. What do you mean? And so to kind of give somebody an opportunity even to be truly sorry, because if you're truly sorry, I think you would just let everything out. And that didn't happen. And so that was a sign to me that maybe it wasn't true sorriness. Anyway, hope you guys enjoyed the show. Until next week, be kind to each other, don't lie. Peace.
Truth Frequency Radio is your #1 source for
The Manafort trial, Russia visit. I'm Ann Cates. A key witness for the prosecution returns to the stand tomorrow in the bank and tax fraud trial of former Trump campaign official Paul Manafort. Correspondent Jerry Bodlander.
Paul Manafort showed no reaction as his one-time right-hand man Rick Gates testified that the two men committed crimes together. Gates said Manafort told him to characterize income that was routed through foreign banks as loans in order to reduce the company's taxable income. He also testified that Manafort didn't want to report his consulting business's control over foreign bank accounts as required by law. Gates listed accounts in the United Kingdom, the Grenadines, and Cyprus.
Republican Senator Rand Paul of Kentucky has met with members of the Russian parliament in Moscow today. Correspondent Frederick Pleitgen.
Apparently, there were some Russian lawmakers who asked him whether or not he could ask for Maria Butina, of course, the Russian gun lobbyist, who has since been accused of being a spy for the Russians in the U.S., whether she could be released and sent back to Russia, or whether he could help with that. It's unclear if any sort of arrangements are being made there.
Paul also invited parliament members to Washington as he meets with Russian officials. A sporting goods chain is being sued by a couple who survived the Sutherland Springs church massacre last year.
The lawsuit claims that the Academy store in Texas broke the law when it sold the shooter Devin Kelly 30-round magazines, which are legal to sell in Texas, but not in Colorado, where Kelly was technically a resident. Gun law expert Emily Taylor says a purchase has to comply with gun laws in both states represented in the sale.
That includes not only your qualification to purchase and possess in either state, but also what firearms are legal in any given state.
The opposition argues that it's not realistic for gun dealers to know the laws of every state. Clayton Neville, Dallas.
On Wall Street, the Dow climbed 40 points, the S&P up 10. I'm Ann Cates.
You must unite what is inside us.
We are TFR. Truth Frequency Radio.